Here we stand, words apart, hearts broken in two. Sleepless nights, losing ground, I'm reaching for you. All right. Welcome to the Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am one of your hosts, James Fauntleroy. It is going to be a special roundtable today. So good to see all of you here joining us today. The Revolutionary Blackout Network Roundtable is every month on the last Thursday of the month. Of course, we didn't do it last Thursday because, well, things got in the way, things happened. But this is a special one because it is also post-election. We wanted to move it to this Thursday. So good to see all of you here. I am one of your hosts, James Fauntleroy. Good to see my brother and sister on screen with me. Good to see you. How you doing?
What's up, Jaybe? What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', Jaybe? What's poppin', Sabby? Always ready to join RBN Roundtable. And we got a special one for you guys. You already know I'm nice, rested now, nice and hydrated. You know, I'm staying hydrated off of liberal tears right now. So it's going to be interesting to have Kshama and Dr. Stein on. We can get their perspective as well. Times are crazy. Liberals are going through some things. And all of a sudden, we have Bernie Sanders, who is a progressive again.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Bernie Sanders have criticisms of the Democratic Party now. So I'm looking forward to hearing Kshama and Stein talk about that. But Jaybe, I'll pass it back to you.
Sure thing. And yes, by the way, they taste so good. But one of the things we're going to do is we're also going to ask you to like the stream really quick. This helps us out to be able to educate, inspire, and activate people so that we can get the news as well as get more people on the ground out there. So thank you so very much for that as well. If you have not, then have you join our mailing list. You can go to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live and upload clips. And we'll be doing some more interesting things in the Substack arena as we move a little bit more forward. So we'll be looking forward to that. Also, if you guys have not, you guys can also email us on our email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. So if you guys have any things that you want to submit to us, any stories, any words of encouragement, or anything like that, you can go ahead and you guys have that there as well. Now, what are we talking about today? Blanket hello to everybody, but I want to be respectful to everybody that we're going to be having on our panel today. We will say our salutations and hellos a little bit later, but we're going to be having a discussion. We're going to be talking about the red wave that actually happened.
Yep.
Look, I'm going to tell you guys right now, we were preemptive in our predictions. We said in 2022, a red wave was going to happen. We were a little early, and now it happened. We're going to be having Kshama Sawant, Margaret Kimberley, and Dr. Jill Stein joining us on the stage, and I'd like to introduce them with us right now. Hello, good to see all of you here to be with us on this very post-election show.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I wanted to start off with is, as far as the win of Donald Trump, was that expected by either one of you? And I would like to start off with you, Dr. Stein.
I was agnostic about who was going to win because it was very hard to tell from the polls. And there was such a dramatic push for Harris, and she was raising money hand over fist, and the party was spending so much money, to defend her. But that said, She was a completely empty suit. She, and the Democrats have completely turned their back on working people. They prevented, the railroad workers from striking. They abandoned their $15 minimum wage. They abandoned, the student debt, bailouts. They really turned their back on working people. Kamala Harris was, bragging about her support for fracking and opening the floodgates for, more fossil fuel production through the Inflation Reduction Act. They've absolutely betrayed their base. And, the last time they got a so-called shellacking, which was 2010, when they were just raked over the coals, far worse than this time. But they had just, bailed out Wall Street and thrown out homeowners to the tune of 7 or 8 million people, basically, had their homes stolen from them through waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street. So the Democrats have been on a steady course for decades right now, throwing working people under the bus. So it was, it was kind of expected that the Democrats and Kamala Harris were not going to pull a rabbit out of the hat, as they were really desperately trying to make people believe. So they got what was coming to them. They are not an opposition party, and they have not been able to stand up to the Republicans. And, when people are really desperate, when they are being, deprived of health care, 50% of Americans are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. When people are really hurting economically, they are subject to demagoguery like Donald Trump. And, that happened. It was absolutely no surprise. Democrats got what they deserved. And, the take-home lesson is that the Democrats are not an opposition party, and we badly need to build, this alternative party, which we saw the beginnings of in this election. And it was a really triumphant election for us, and we emerged in spite of an unprecedented, effort to silence and disparage us, and to throw us under the bus. We emerged really strong. They were able to suppress our numbers, although the final numbers are not final, and there are, write-in votes which haven't been reported, including from New York State, where there will be, probably 100,000 or more votes to add to the tally. The numbers aren't in, but they certainly suppressed our votes. But we have a stronger, more committed and passionate, coalition here that's going to keep fighting, because when you are dealing with genocide, you're not on a normal election cycle, and it doesn't end just because election day was held. So we're all really excited and fired up right now. We feel like we won. We won against all odds. We won. And in the words of Malcolm X, never let your opponent tell you how many of you there are. And, the derivative of that is never let your opponent, define your victory. We define the victory for ourselves. And in terms of what was possible, I think we went far beyond what was possible in this race, given the, extraordinary money and effort. The Democrats were spending the equivalent of our entire campaign budget, with more people than we had on our entire staff, just to smear and disparage and force us down in the polls. So all things considered, I'm very happy and really excited, and so grateful for everyone who made this, an absolutely historic fight back.
Yeah, and just before I go straight to Kshama, really quick, just full disclosure, I am co-press director for the Jill Stein 2024 campaign, so I'm literally talking to my boss, but I just wanted to give you guys that full disclosure too. But yes, that was definitely a victory in my eyes, especially too. Kshama, back to you, your question about, did you expect a Trump victory, or were you expecting a victory for Harris, or were you expecting a victory for Stein?
I think as far as what Jill said, I really agree that in terms of what vote we were able to win for the Jill Stein campaign, I would definitely define it as a success as well. And I think it is a real triumph of working class organizing that we were able to do this and able to get the kind of significant vote for Jill Stein, especially, for example, in Dearborn and in specific precincts of Dearborn where Harris actually was the last. Even in entire precincts where Biden had won a blowout majority in 2020. We're talking about a city, Dearborn, a city where every precinct went significantly for Biden in 2020. And here we're seeing a whole section of the working class and also the population as a whole, a community, Arab and Muslim community, really demanding an alternative to war and genocide. And on your question specifically, Jay, did I expect? No, I don't. I don't think anybody can honestly say that they had the exact real uh, idea of what was going to happen. And here's the reason why. It's not for lack of analysis or anything like that, but it's because, first of all, as Jill said, the polls kept showing a razor thin margin. But overall, politically, the reason why this was hard to predict was because you had two deeply unpopular and really hated candidates. And you had Trump leaving office in 2020 as the most unpopular president in modern US history, and yet coming back on the stage of US politics in such a big way, that being a testament to the complete betrayals by the Democratic Party. Jill mentioned many of those, the $15 an hour minimum wage betrayal, the betrayal on canceling student debt, the fact that the railroad strike was betrayed and in fact was broken. In fact, I've said this before, probably also on your show, that the genocide was obviously a historic red line that the Democrats broke, but they had broken another red line before that, which was breaking the railroad worker strike. And no strike breaker deserves the vote of any working person. So we were heading into election night with two deeply unpopular parties. It's not just about these two candidates. The anger runs among the tens of millions of American working class people. The anger runs deep. And it is an anger born out of decades of being sold out. And obviously, it starts from the very beginning because the Democrats were never a party of the working class. Remember, the Democrats were the party of slavery. So let's not forget that. Let's not have allow people to wipe out history. But if you want to look at the more recent times in terms of the generations that are playing a role today in politics, it's since Obama, at the very least, people are seeing that all this message of hope and change and joy, all of this is completely not only vapid, it's worse than empty. It is an actual, it's sort of, it's double speak where people are being told that they should be doing, voting for Democrats for nice things to happen. But in fact, all these bad things are happening, the cost of living crisis, all of the economic woes that people are going through, and then now on top of that, genocide. But I just want to be clear that Trump won by a significant margin, not a razor thin margin. So really, the polls were not an indication at all of what was going to happen. But it was also not a blowout. Although, on the other hand, Trump also won both the popular vote and the electoral college vote. And just one thing I'll mention is that if you want to see how much these two candidates are actually disliked, really, but at the same time, people did end up voting for Trump. Uh, there's a section of the population that has real illusions in Donald Trump, and I think part of this show, of course, we should dedicate it to explaining why the people who are having illusions in Trump are in working people are in for a rude surprise. And at the same time, you see uh, the fact that Kamala Harris's support for the genocide and for her complete betrayal and the Democrats' betrayal of working class is showing up in such remarkable ways. So I just wanted to share one statistic before I stop, which is that if you look at first-time voters, which is a good indicator of young people, in 2020, 54% of first-time voters backed Joe Biden versus 32% for Donald Trump. This time, Donald Trump had a 9 percentage point lead over Kamala Harris among first-time voters with 54% to 45%. That is itself a story that young people are angry, but we have to be clear, A lot of people who voted for Trump voted as a protest vote, and a lot of people who voted for Kamala Harris voted as a protest vote. So, and how the corporate media was trying to characterize the vote for Jill Stein as a protest vote, and I kept saying that this is not a protest vote. This is a vote backed up by a real strategy that we want to build on this, and we need a new party for working people, and that has to start by rejecting both parties today. And so, the real protest votes were the votes for Harris and Trump.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Sabs, what is your initial thoughts? What did you initially think that was going to happen in comparison to the actual results?
So I think we went back and forth on this for quite a bit. Like, first I thought that Donald Trump was going to win. Remember we were talking about, like, first I thought he was going to win. And then the polls started to shift, and it looks like he was starting to gain. So then I said, oh, I don't know. I think she's going to win. I really think she may have a chance to win. And then in the final stretch, I started to look at other polls and not just the polls that were like the typical, like New York Times, the Marist poll, the polls that are typically lean a little bit more left. And I started looking at other polls, and there was one poll in particular by Atlas Intel. And apparently, based on the research, they have actually been pretty good about predicting how Donald Trump is going to do. So when I looked at that poll, and then I looked at the Real Clear Politics average of all the polls, both of them were showing that Donald Trump was going to win. And and then the conversation became between both of us was by how much. And then another thing I checked was Polymarket. So Polymarket, these are betting odds. Again, it's just betting. But something happened in particular as we got closer to the election. He just kind of shot up in the betting odds. So doesn't mean it's necessarily a predictor of what is going to happen. But I would say going into election day, you definitely want to be on the good side of that chart and not on the bad side. And he, like, his bet shot up very quick, like 7 o'clock that morning. His bet just went just straight up, and I was like, yeah, I think he's gonna win. But I think again, it's there are a number of people I know that voted for Donald Trump to basically give a middle finger to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, not necessarily because they like Donald Trump. There are a number of people that voted for him because of economic issues. There are a number of people. I mean, there's so many different ways. And I'm curious to hear what was heard from the workers. Because I know, like, Jill and both you and Kshama were speaking to workers in Seattle. I think these were the machinists, the Boeing machinists that went on strike at that point in time. I'm curious what they were feeling electorally. And also, I mean, I spoke to the railroad workers. They told me from the jump they were not going to support the Biden-Harris campaign going into 2024. But I'm curious, what has been the conversation from some of the workers?
Well, I'll say certainly out on the campaign trail, everyday working people, and, certainly also hearing from workers involved in Workers Strike Back, who are very, politically savvy and active. They were supporting us, and they had no illusions that either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump were going to help them in the least. And they were very clear, and they were some of the most politically astute people that I've ever met. And it was, just big shout out for the work that Kshama's been doing with Workers Strike Back. This is an amazing organization. And I think working with them was a major big breakthrough here politically for that to have happened in this campaign. But, most people who are coming out to our events, which were really surging in the final weeks of the campaign, and just across the board, people are tearing their hair out. They're just absolutely distraught and feeling destroyed, like that there is no future for them either with the Democratic or the Republican Party. And we especially hear this from young people. My internet went down for a moment there when Kshama was speaking, so I don't know if she already mentioned this, but there's data now showing that the turnout among 18 to 44-year-olds was down 7%. Over the last 8 years, which is staggering. And, that could have made all the difference. I mean, that 7% had Harris, earned those votes, but she didn't. She's been throwing working people and young people, and not only her, but Biden, and she couldn't distinguish herself from Biden in any way, except that she would bring some, a Republican into her cabinet, and that she would have a bipartisan, policy advisory group. That's about as different as she could get from Joe Biden, and just the total devastation that working people are feeling now. Around housing and healthcare and inflation and college debt and the climate and the genocide. So across the board, people, young people especially, and working people, we did not hear any illusions from people that there's any way forward here under the Democratic or Republican Party, and that the Democrats are just full of lies. They break their promises. The Republicans don't even make promises in the first place, but that leaves people feeling really embittered and angry towards Democrats. And because there was a Democrat in the White House, people were ready to vote the other way. So, I think working people don't see a way forward right now. And, and the kinds of question, Bernie Sanders just put out the statement today about, how the Democratic Party needs to have a reckoning. And then, he got really smeared by Jamie Harrison, calling Bernie out and trying to deny it. And, so that's great. Is the Democratic Party going to have a come to Jesus moment? I don't think so. They've managed not to have that since like the 1960s, when there was this realignment movement, which was all about bringing together the civil rights movement and the labor movement, and together they would create a progressive Democratic Party. And that didn't happen in large part because of the war in Vietnam, which it was not possible to criticize, much like the current wars. So, Bernie Sanders is, better late than never. And where's he going to go with this? He said, there's a lot more to say. Stay tuned, as if there's something coming. So I want to say to him, okay, Bernie, come on over, come on over. Let's see you put your money where your mouth is here for once, before you leave this planet. How do you change your legacy here, which is kind of being thrown to the dogs? Stand up and stand for something, but I can't see that happening in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, Bernie, a little too late. That statement was. I really wanted to just honestly, if I ever met Bernie Sanders in person, I would just say to him, you know what, Bernie, there was a platform that had a working class agenda.
Bernie, and this is the argument that I have made for why the Democratic Party is the most effective evil. Mm-hmm. They're the most effective evil because they put the same liberals to who would oppose a Republican administration to sleep. How long until you guys think Bernie Sanders and AOC start tweeting about Medicare for all again? It's coming. All of a sudden, you're going to hear them bringing up radical ideas again. Now you're going to see the theater. And this is what you mentioned. I was going to ask this a little bit later, but since it was brought up, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Bernie Sanders just now remembering that he was a progressive. just now remembering he's supposed to be oppositional to the two-party duopoly. And I want to pass. I'll pass to Kshama first for Kshama's thoughts on this. Here's Bernie now realizing that it's time to do his role to sheep herd the disenfranchised and disaffected young people who are upset after this election, and give them hope and illusion that positive change is possible through the Democratic Party. It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people will find that the working class has abandoned them. That's very interesting, because if Bernie Sanders is claiming that the Democratic Party abandoned the working class, and you was working with the Democratic Party, what does that mean? That means you abandoned the working class. But before I go on a rant, we got guests here. We want to hear from them, right? Kshama. Wait,
No,
what's your
no,
thoughts on
Nick, yeah, you should go ahead, definitely go ahead and rant because I want to hear that as well. But just to add a few points about that, I don't think we should be expecting anything from Bernie Sanders, as Sabby was saying. I think it is dangerous also to fuel any illusions that, oh, yeah, he might actually change anything. No, he's not going to. We have to be completely clear, and we would be abdicating uh, our duties as those of us who are helping to lead movements if we weren't crystal clear about it. Bernie Sanders is 80 years old. He has his political analysis. His political analysis is not anti-capitalist,
that?
and for him, he has, it's his political analysis tells him this is the best we can have. He doesn't believe that a new party is possible. It's a completely ahistorical point of view, because actually throughout history, the biggest victories that were ever won for working people on the basis of capitalism was when you had actual so-called third parties, basically parties for the working class, being built from scratch by workers, by militant labor union members, and uh, um, for the most part, actually, and this is the part that's left unsaid, even some of the most left-wing history books, is that for the most part, these parties were led by Marxists, by socialist
Yeah.
revolutionaries, and that is how the Canadian Commonwealth Federation, CCF party was built in Canada, which ended up winning the majority vote in the Saskatchewan province, and they were well on their way to win a really significant proportion of votes in the federal elections. And out of fear of that, the bourgeois parties, the parties of capitalism in Canada, ended up instituting universal healthcare. That is how Canada got its healthcare. It was
Wow.
precisely by the formation of a working class party led by revolutionary ideas. And I think that is what we need to, that proven history, that proven track record of victories for the working class, both from Canada and from Western Europe, from 50 years ago. Those are the examples that we need to keep in mind, and not put our faith in Bernie Sanders. And I don't doubt his intentions. That is why I'm saying that his political analysis is what's been guiding him for decades. And so his good intentions don't matter in the slightest. They are of no use. They are of zero use to the working class, because he has spent his entire life turning everyone back into the Democratic Party, the very same Democratic Party that has sold out working people. And so my question is, where was Bernie Sanders only a few days ago when he was shilling for Kamala Harris? When he
Uh,
called people who were angry about the genocide and told them, look, I'm angry too, but now is the time to vote for Kamala Harris. And now, after the election, he comes out and says, oh, the Democrats have betrayed the working class. Everybody knew Democrats had betrayed the working class. The working class knew the Democrats had betrayed them. And that is why they voted in the way they voted. Pennsylvania, just to give you an example, there was an article in The Intercept by Kayla Lacey. Unfortunately, the article presents the Working Families Party as some sort of actual opposition to the Democratic Party, which they are not. They are also playing the role as Bernie Sanders. They keep sending people back into the garden path of the Democratic Party. But the article has a very useful reporting of what working class people are saying. Sabby, you were saying, you want to know what working class people are thinking. Well, here is what working class people are saying. The rent is too high. People are struggling to pay their bills. And in Pennsylvania, just to give you an example, the minimum wage hasn't gone up in over 20 years. This is the situation that working people are facing. They are fed up. A country that is more wealthy today than it was 10 years ago, more wealthier than it was before the pandemic. And most of that wealth has gone to the billionaires. So if you want to look at how working people think, many just to look at the minimum wage ballot measures, I think this is a very good indicator of where working people are. Alaska, which went for 55.6% for Trump, voted 56.5% for a $15 an hour minimum wage. A greater proportion of the Alaska working class voters voted in favor of $15 an hour than they voted in favor of Trump. This is a state that went to Trump. Arizona voted 74.5% against creating a lower tier minimum wage for tipped workers. And we know, and I hope you all have heard, in Seattle, the Democratic Party here today this year has been shamefully attempting to enshrine permanently a lower tier minimum wage in the $15 an hour that we won 10 years ago. In Missouri went for Trump. Missouri voters voted 57.6% for increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Massachusetts voted 64% against increasing the minimum wage, even though it went for Harris. So you see both things happening, where actually working people are over and over again voting for progressive shifts in their standards of living, while at the same time voting for Trump. I think that's a real indication of how deeply this schism between the Democratic Party and the working class has happened. And I think our challenge right now is to make that permanent. That schism between the working class and the Democratic Party
Absolutely.
has to be permanent. The Democrats are a party of capitalism, and then the other schism that we need to enable and really encourage and make happen is between the working class and the Republican Party, because both parties are parties of capitalism.
Very well said, Kshama. We have our amazing RBN family, Margaret Kimberley, is joining us as well. I'm very happy to have you on the panel. And I want to get you in this. I don't know how much you was watching beforehand. We were discussing that pathetic grifter scumbag, Bernie. I'm sorry. You guys know how I am. I'm not going to be nice about it. Because Bernie Sanders, as we just showed you before Margaret joined, is now pretending that he's a progressive again. He just now realized the working class is being exploited. And now he's like, well, the Democratic Party, now that the Democrats won't be in power, he is now saying, oh, well, the Democrats are abandoning the working class people. Hold up, Bernie. Hold up. And I want Margie, you can comment on this as well. Bernie, you was just saying that the Democratic domestic agenda was so good. It was so good that we should forgive the Democratic Party for burning children alive. The argument you was making before Kamala lost was Democrats are killing it so bad that we should support a party that facilitated genocide. If you don't believe me, I spoiled it on the screen a little bit. Hear what Bernie Sanders was saying before he realized that he got to continue his grift into the Trump era.
I believe that President Biden, in many ways, has been the most progressive, pro-worker president since FDR.
Now he thinks that the Democratic Party is abandoning the working class people. So I'm sorry, I don't think it's good faith. How can you think this is good faith? That he was just saying that the Biden administration was the most progressive, pro-worker presidency ever. And now that Kamala loses, he's like, oh my God, I think the Democrats abandoned the working class. Get out of here. But sorry, that I had to get out of my chest. Margaret Kimberley is joining us today. One of our favorite guests. Margaret, how are you feeling post-election? Make sure you check your audio. There you go.
I got it. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to see all of you. I think Kshama's the only one I have never met. Great to be here. My late colleague, one of our co-founders of Black Agenda Report, Bruce Dixon, in 2015 said Bernie Sanders is a sheepdog for the Democrats. He said that from the very beginning. He's one of the first person, maybe the first person, to coin that phrase in relation to Sanders. I can't believe he has the nerve to have us believe that he just changed his mind overnight. He's the best. He's the best since, that drivel about most progressive since FDR, which, by the way, overselling him that way, I think is one of the reasons that Harris lost, because they sold this most progressive since FDR because there were still COVID support programs coming in, and those disappeared. And so everybody's like, I can't believe she got 15 million fewer votes. I can. How many people were kicked off SNAP, kicked off Medicaid, lost their unemployment? What else did they have? Eviction protection. That helped millions of people. But once again, we see how people who are struggling with meeting their most basic needs are just ignored by the pundits, by the corporate media, by the duopoly parties. It's like, we can't believe people didn't come out for her. Well, the biggest thing I'm going to say is the primary, the fact that they just thought they could plop her in at the last minute. I mean, I could go on and on and on that they pushed Biden through. They rigged it for him 4 years ago. They knew he wasn't well and thought they could sneak him in. Then when he face planted at the debate, and what do we do? What do we do? It was awkward not to have the vice president, and they made a big deal about having a person of color as vice president. So you can't. So they were stuck, and they had to. But she was still the Kamala Harris who can't finish a sentence, the word salads, the nervous laugh, the inability to answer questions. And then for her to talk about groceries. So someone said to her, it's very funny to me, actually, people are concerned about inflation, but it didn't matter what anybody asked her about, she'd talk about grocery prices. And I came from a middle-class family. Well, we wouldn't know it because you weren't promoting anything that was going to help working people. But Bernie Sanders, back to Bernie. Bernie's a relic. He had his opportunity to really make his mark as a progressive. He failed twice to fight for his people. And so now he's just a sheepdog to people who would beat him like he was a dog. I shouldn't say that. You shouldn't beat a dog, but I think you know what I mean.
I was just going to add in really quick. If everybody remembers, Bernie was at I would say Bernie was the most spicy when Donald Trump was running, or when Donald Trump was in office. So like when Donald Trump won 2016, Bernie was very spicy and fiery. Everybody remembers that. But once Biden won in 2020, then it was just kind of like, Biden's doing a great job. He's the best, best president since FDR and best president since this generation and all that kind of stuff. But now that Trump is coming back in again, now you see in that spicy Bernie again.
How long until AOC brings her camera?
But it goes to my point, which is that these so-called progressives are only fiery and spicy when their opposition is the Republican. When the Republican is occupying the White House, that is when you see that fire from them. That picture right there of AOC pretending to cry about those kids in those cages, that was when Donald Trump was in office. You didn't see that from her when Joe Biden was in office. Kids are still in cages. So that's the thing. And I think this is something I think that, including myself in the beginning, I got wrong about Justice Democrats. I had this expectation that they were going to be fiery and spicy like this, regardless who the president was. But it was very clear the reason why they had that energy and that anger is because the opposition they were fighting against was the Republican Party. The moment things turned in their favor and the Democrats were in the White House, they went along with the team.
You already know AOC is preparing to bring her camera crew to the border to pretend to care about the children, not in cages. They wasn't in cages the last 4 years. They was in child overflow facilities. So she's going to bring her camera crew at the migrant overflow facilities and do the resistance nonsense that she was dreading doing. But go ahead, my brother James. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, just, and also, by the way, just to add to your point, I didn't hear anybody cry about the portion of the wall that Barack Obama helped build. So if they're going to talk about it, then they need to talk about it all, especially the kids in cages, which Barack Obama also built along with Jay Johnson as well. One of my questions that I had, and this is a beautiful scene, right? Look at this photo. That me and Nick are the minority in the group. We have a majority women here. And one of the people who are running for president, Kamala Harris, is a woman. Now, I've been seeing many times throughout social media, I've been hearing on TikTok, I've been seeing on the news with pundits. From your perspective, and we're going to be starting off with Jill on this one. We know the inherent elements of this country and know how they are. Racism and misogyny have not been the factor in deciding the election, but was it a factor in deciding this election? We'll start off with you, Jill.
So, Kamala Harris is a member of the Black leadership class and weaponizes gender and race on behalf of genocide. And if you can believe that, we got a whole lot of bridges to sell you in Brooklyn. So she's got a story to tell. And does she actually represent those interests? Absolutely not. She betrays those interests. She doesn't hesitate to kill children and women, in Gaza and expand that war. And women and families are, the leading targets of war and are killed at, extraordinary rates. She, like Hillary Clinton, claimed to be feminists, but they're not. They're hurting American families, depriving American families of healthcare and housing and childcare and family leave and all the other things that women especially need and families need. And so it's BS. Now, should you vote for her because she happens to be a woman and happens to be of color? This is just, identity politics that's being played out here, that's being weaponized against the interests of those groups. So I don't, and there was another woman in the race who, so I don't see that, I don't see people saying that I was rejected for being a woman, or I wasn't covered or treated fairly by the media because, for being a woman. So I think that's there's no there. And for her being, African American or, of mixed race, maybe that held some little bit of sway, but I think this is an effort to really duck accountability by the Democratic Party. This is an effort for them to, blame progressives for being insufficiently active and mobilized when she herself has been really, destructive to the progressive agenda and has essentially thrown that agenda over the cliff in every way imaginable. Minimum wage, jobs, healthcare, student debt, housing, on policy after policy on the climate, and especially on war, on cannibalizing the American budget, 50% of which is being spent on the endless war machine. And if you include, the related agencies like the Veterans Administration and Customs and Border Protection and the FBI and CIA, it's more like 63% of the American budget. So I don't think there's anything about her that represents the interests of women and children and social justice and disenfranchised people. So I don't think the Democrats can write this off as, bigotry against Kamala Harris. I think there's just much deeper, issues at play here, which is essentially the abandonment of women and children and people of color and vulnerable communities, period. I think this is just weaponizing identity politics to try to duck their accountability.
Moving on to Kshama, what are your thoughts? Was it not the factor, but was it a factor?
I think the question is, was it a statistically significant factor? If it is statistically significant, then it matters because there's all kinds of factors floating in the air. Any one person could be casting a misogynist vote for Trump against Harris, but that's not what we're talking about, obviously. So I'm just sort of restating your question. I think what matters to us is, was it a statistically significant factor? I absolutely don't think so. First of all, as Jill said, there was another woman candidate. So if you don't want to vote for Kamala Harris, then you should have voted for Jill Stein. So, in that sense, I don't think that misogyny or sexism or racism was a statistically significant factor. In fact, what we're seeing is that the working class across race and gender has been angry about being let down, being sold out on a whole host of issues and looking for an alternative. So at the end of the day, even who voted for Harris and who voted for Trump is not enough of an indicator, because at the end of the day, most of the people who voted for either are looking for something that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats can offer. So in that sense, the framing of it is also beyond what we see from the election results. But if you look at the election results themselves, they are an indicator in that the Republican Party, in terms of Trump, has made gains in the Latino population, in the Black population. Obviously, the majority of Latino and the majority of Black voters are still voting Democrat, but it's a question of what is the rate of change. That it's decreasing. So if you look at Biden's numbers versus Harris's numbers, they are reduced, and it is a remarkable situation because these are people who are feeling completely alienated from the Democratic Party, from the elitism of the Democratic Party, and they're voting for Trump. And yes, I think we have to also be sober and understand that some working class people do have illusions in Trump. That's why I was saying earlier that part of our task now, our political responsibility, is to make it clear that that's not going to happen. And Trump, I think, is going to reveal that he does not more than he did in his first term, that he is very much a president for the billionaires, as Harris would have been. The only thing that the ruling class, the capitalist class, does not like about him is that he's a rogue figure. He is not completely controllable and pliable by them. So what they hate about him is not that he carried out tax cuts for the rich when he was the president, that he carried out attempted to carry out a Muslim ban, or was hostile to working class and poor immigrants. What they hate about him is that he is not a completely, a part of their capitalist state, and he threatens his way of functioning, threatens the stability of the capitalist state. That is what they don't like about him. But if you look at the state of affairs for women and working class and poor people of color, it is absolutely dismal. And both the Democratic and Republican parties are responsible for it. And it cannot be, we cannot accept any sort of identity politics based ideas that somehow Harris lost because she is a woman. I mean, AOC has been trying it, but I think she should be. I don't know if she has been skewered, but I think she should be skewered. She said something like, if Kamala Harris was Tom Harris, we might have a different result today. I don't think so. I mean, obviously, none of us has a counterfactual. We don't have a machine that can create an alternate reality for us to study it. But I think it's safe to say that that is not what was driving gender. The gender or the personal identity of Harris or Trump was not what was driving the vote. The vote that is the result, the vote is mainly a result of working class anger. I mean, just to use quick statistics, if you want to talk about women and how well women are doing, the maternal mortality rate in the United States increased year after year from 2000 to 2021. And that includes during Obama's 8 years in office. The United States is the only high-income country that doesn't guarantee paid leave after childbirth. I mean, these are shocking numbers for the richest country in the history of humanity. And the Democrats have been party to this. They have taken the same stance, except with different rhetoric. And only 13 states, and this is one of the most shocking statistics, only 13 states have paid family and medical leave programs. I mean, these are the very most basic needs of working class and poor people. And those needs are not guaranteed in our nation. And so, no, I think that as a matter of fact, just to echo what was already said, that really both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are figureheads of the elite, of the capitalist class. And if we want to fight for women and people of color, then we will need a new party, but a new party that is fundamentally different than these two parties. It's not just a question of a third party. It's a question of a party that fights for the working class, a party that is clear that it is not going to be just running the capitalist administrative machinery, but a party that runs candidates like we did in Seattle for 10 years, where we disrupted the capitalist business as usual in order to build movements and win victories. That's the kind of party we need.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to you, Margaret, and then after that, we'll go to Sabby, because I would like your thoughts about is being racism, misogyny is maybe not a factor, but is it not the factor, but is it a factor?
I mean, I'm sure that, listen, this is a country full of misogyny, patriarchy. So I am sure there are people who did not vote for Harris because she's a woman, but is it a statistically significant? Was that the phrase number? I don't think so. She was a bad candidate. The process which chose her was bad, and she, I want to point out something else. She raised twice as much money as Donald Trump did, more than twice, which tells you the Democratic Party is the party of finance capital. And that means, by definition, they're not going to meet any of the needs we've been discussing, healthcare or housing or even raising the minimum wage. That's anathema to these people. They want us ground into the dirt, a race to the bottom, austerity for everyone. So that's what we get from, I know a lot of people said, well, Kamala, is it Kamala? I don't know. Is it still a big thing to pronounce her name right? Is Kamala going to do anything?
How dare you?
People? No, she won't, because the oligarchs won't let her. They didn't let Build Back Better pass. So, on the gender issue, yes, there's gender discrimination. Yes, there are people who won't vote for a woman, but unfortunately, that's now become the excuse for liberals. Well, there are people who won't vote. A woman can't win. Well, get a better woman. I mean, I'm sorry, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. It's like, no, they couldn't win. I mean, Hillary Clinton won actually, but she, couldn't be bothered she couldn't get 10,000 more votes in Michigan as an example. But yes, misogyny is real. Gender discrimination is real. But for the likes of Kamala Harris and her fans to try to use that to excuse her failure, to excuse the lack of transparency in her being the candidate, excusing the Biden administration failures is something we should not accept.
Are you guys excited for the Democrats to roll out and shame progressives not to get behind Pete Buttigieg when he runs in 2028? And then, James, isn't going to be interesting how liberals will call you an anti-gay bigot once you refuse to vote for Pete Buttigieg? Isn't that going to be funny? Because I think that's the next strategy.
Let them do it. Let them do it. Sabs, I want to get your opinion about misogyny, and is it B factor or is it A factor?
It's not. I feel like there are some people, yes, some people don't want a female president. Some people probably didn't want her because of her race, but I wouldn't say that's the majority. And I think Democrats are using that as an excuse as to why Kamala Harris didn't win. And at the end of the day, most people that I spoke to said the number one issue to them was the economy. So this is where a failure of Kamala Harris's campaign. She didn't run a strong economic platform. And we all are used to this. Like Jill had a strong economic platform. I mean, it's just even Donald Trump was talking about, again, don't know if he would actually do this, but even Donald Trump was talking about removing taxes from overtime. It just little things. It's like beyond, I'm going to give you a $25,000 tax credit for a house. And then when you have an economic platform, it needs to be simple, not this tax credit for that, if you're a first time home buyer, first generation person to do. People don't have time for all that. Like, it should be straight and simple and to the point. And I don't understand how she couldn't have, you honestly could have just looked at the platform that Bernie Sanders had, and that's your blueprint. Like, I don't understand. If I was a Democrat and I was running as a politician in the Democratic Party, that you got a platform that worked, that was able to get a lot of support from hundreds of thousands of people across the country. It's that simple. And then on top of that, knowing that we're dealing with inflation, knowing that the economy is not great for everyday Americans, you didn't even have, at the minimum, a $15 minimum wage on your platform. That wasn't even there. What are you doing? No universal health care. No. Kamala Harris has never been a strong candidate. She wasn't a strong candidate when she ran in 2020. Yes, she had that moment on the debate stage when she said, well, that little girl was me. But then after that, there were no more moments that gave her a plus. Every other moment after that was her getting destroyed. like when Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her because she went off about her record, which till this day, Kamala Harris has not had an honest sit down about her record. She's not really talking about it. You have to be willing to talk about why you locked up all these Black people in California. You need to be willing to talk about the truancy law, how you locked up parents in California, which also aided to the school to prison pipeline. Kamala Harris isn't willing to do that. Just pretend like these things didn't happen. So, and then the Democratic Party decided it would be a good idea to run on her identity. You could have the first Black female, first Black this, and then they got all these celebrities to come together that a lot of us don't like any damn way. DL, Roland Martin, like, come on. And like, it just, to tell us you better get in line and vote for this woman. This was a terrible idea. This was
Roland Martin was furious at you, Sabby.
It was failed. And then Barack Obama's there to point his finger and say the problem is you brothers. Like, what is going on here? This is terrible. Failure. It was a terrible idea not to have a primary. Terrible idea. You can't they pushed this woman on us, man. They pushed this woman on us, and she changed what she wanted or who she was depending on who she was talking to at that time.
Yeah. It's amazing that she was actually the worst candidate of all time, not Hillary Clinton. But James, I think you want to chime in. What you about to chime in, brother?
Yes, I actually wanted to share this as well because I think this is going to be very indicative. Listen, and I want you guys to get your thoughts on this.
I just say really quickly too. Democrats need to be mature, and they need to be honest, and they need to say yes, there's misogyny. But it's not just misogyny from white men. Mm-hmm. Misogyny from Hispanic men. Right. Misogyny from Black men. Things you've already been talking about. You do not want a woman leading them. Might be race issues with Hispanics. They don't want a Black woman as president of the United States. You know, the Democratic Party, I've always found when you're sitting around talking, they love to just sort of balkanize everybody into these separate groups and say, oh, white people don't like women and Black people. No, it is time for the Democrats to say, okay, and you and I have talked about this before. A lot of Hispanic voters have problems with Black candidates.
Right.
A lot
and
of
with other Hispanics. You got some that don't like each other. And some of the most misogynist things I've heard going on this Get Out the Vote tour came from Black men. I mean, misogynist things. So you're absolutely right. It's not simplistic. And we've got to have real honest conversations about it.
Honest conversations.
So let me ask a question. If the Republican candidate that was running, let's say it was a woman that was running, let's say it was Tulsi Gabbard, which could happen at some point, and the Democrat candidate was a man, and most of the Latino votes went to the Democrat, which usually was the case until now, would people say, do you think the Republicans would sit back and say that the Latino men are misogynist against Tulsi Gabbard? See, this is why I'm
officially saying it now. If we was to follow their point of view, I'm gonna accuse every single person of not voting for Joe Stein of being anti-Semitic. Wonder if we can get ADL behind that. And our brother Q, and I just had this on my mind since you played that clip, James, and I want to pass it to Dr. Stein and Kshama if they want to reply as well. But our brother Q, Ethni Ali, our good RBN friend, had a banger tweet in response to this. Absolute banger. Well, I tried to say something similar to this before, but I couldn't say it as well stated as Ethni Ali. And you guys see how the capitalist class, and I mentioned this in stream yesterday, they want you to hate your neighbor. They want you to blame your neighbor. Your neighbor's a racist. Your neighbor is a misogynist. So let me just read Q's tweet. I think he knocks it out of the park with this. And then exactly why liberals will always hate their neighbors and blame the poor and working class for not supporting them politically. I'll just read to here it is. One reason I adopted communism is that self-criticism and material analysis are baked into it. When communists fail, the answer is never the people are too stupid for their own good. It's I haven't done enough good for the people. You're not going to hear communists tell and yell at the working class and tell them that they are racist and stupid. Liberalism is the antipode, I think that is, to this tendency. So liberalism leads you to have this very nihilistic view of humanity. We had Jody Burr on, and she explained when she was on our show that when you read theory, when you read Marxist theory, there's nothing that instills more revolutionary optimism in you. Faith in the working class in you until after you read theory. But if you're a liberal, you're a doomer. You think people are inherently evil. You think people are inherently greedy and selfish. So I want to pass it kind of open panel, Stein, Kshama, Margaret. Do you guys have any thoughts before we move on? I want to get some super chats before we get too buried behind. James, did you want to chime in? I see you. Go ahead, bro.
Just to set things up, because I wanted to point to the hypocrisy of Joe Scarborough, because he's talking about people who voted for Trump. Let's take a look. Shout out to Riot Reed for this. Let's at the joy tonight. Here's liberal number one. Says, them too. I hope Trump turns Gaza into a parking lot now. Let's go to liberal number two. Liberal number two says, I hope Gaza gets turned into a parking lot. Liberal number three says, I hope they make a parking lot into Gaza, LMAO. Liberal number four, F them. I hope they're all deported. And I can't wait until Netanyahu gives the green light to turn Gaza into a parking lot. I'm sorry, you wanted to talk about racism and misogyny?
Wow.
It's all they're all coming out of the woodwork now. They're all coming out of the woodwork, which we talked about this before, that you get the same type of behavior from liberals when you don't get in line and do what they tell you to do.
Yeah. They hate other people. They hate people who don't agree with them. Anybody who didn't vote for her as a knuckle dragging MAGA hat wearer, and there's no other reason not to have voted for Kamala Harris. I've seen this. It's this reactionary attitudes. I hope he kills the Palestinians. I hope all kinds of the Latinos who didn't vote for him. By the way, most Latinos did vote for Harris, although in smaller numbers than in the past. I hope Latinos all get deported. Why didn't they vote for him? They should get deported. If you voted, you're a citizen. You can't get deported. That's another thing. But all the stupidity, all the hatred that people have in this country, and the liberals, again, have exposed themselves. They pretend to be more enlightened and smarter and superior to other people. But if you scratch them just a little bit, it all comes out.
And just to jump in here, agreeing completely, it's not like the liberal Democrats have been defending the cause of women or the cause of Black people, because, you can look at all the lip service from the civil rights movement and all the talk that the Democrats have delivered, but the condition, the actual economic condition, the health condition of African Americans and the disparities are not improved at all. The disparities are every bit as bad as they were in 1960. And the Democrats, for all their bleeding hearts about women's reproductive rights, well, they could have opened abortion clinics, 2 years ago when Roe was repealed. They could have opened abortion clinics right then in every state, or in all states, actually, using federal property, using military, bases. So, they're just purely opportunists. And if they had some other issue here, like that they could try to get traction around, I think they played out Russiagate. There were efforts to blame this on Russians again, but that didn't get any traction. They would be blaming it on Hamas if there was some argument that they could make that Hamas, caused this. It's just BS. And I want to read a letter that I found at my door saying from a liberal in my community. This is just how much, how compelling their reasoning is. She says, this is a difficult letter to write. Yada, yada. I've never communicated before with someone who ran for national office. And I'm really worried about climate change and LGBTQ rights in the Middle East and Gaza and Ukraine and all that's happening. However, your interference in the 2024 presidential election confounds me and upsets me. This is about me. Your presence on the ticket did not elevate any of these issues that I am worried about and that I lose sleep over. In fact, you stole 623,000 votes that could have gone to Harris. Obviously, she wouldn't have won with those votes, but what a useless and expensive experiment this was. Instead, you could have channeled people's concerns to Harris. I am disgusted. What a horrible waste of money. How anyone could trust that you would deliver for them is beyond me. There are so many ways you could have made an impact, and yet you chose selfishly to run for president.
Oh, dear Lord. How dare you, Jill? How dare you engage in democracy?
Their name and address. Can I dox this person?
Hold up. Wait. So as the co-press director, I have to say, I cannot tell you, Joe, how many emails I've got saying exactly the same thing. And we and Sam were just like, all right, we passing by that. It is bonkers. So just wanted to put that out
Dude,
there.
I'm loving the fact that you have some fucking liberal boomer. Some person who, because this is like the standard X comment, like the average liberal paid troll.
Yeah.
So this is someone who apparently is not technologically gifted. So they probably don't know how to log into X. So they did it the old school way. They decided to troll Joe Stein since they couldn't send her a private message. It's probably some 88-year-old Morning Joe watcher who just saw a segment on MSNBC about third parties, and he didn't know how long his social media, so he wrote a long-ass letter. I'm so glad you shared that. That's so hilarious.
That to me is classic liberal thinking, and it just doesn't even deserve the time of day. It's just nonsense, and I hate even wasting time. I don't usually even respond to that. This is about speaking to people who are really hurting, because we know that's most people. That's 1 out of every 3 eligible voters in 2020 who would not, who could not bear to cast a vote for either of these zombie opportunistic candidates and parties that are being rammed down our throats. That's 1 out of every 3. And now we know there's an additional 7% at least of voters who between the ages of 18 and 44 who wouldn't vote either. So, this gets to be, it's getting to be nearly a majority of voters. Now it's 40% or maybe more who could not vote. That's who we need to talk to. And we should not be distracted by this BS nonsense that's, the Democrats had a whole war room on which they spent the equivalent of our entire campaign budget, had 30 staffers just to drum up smears and nonsense to try to push us down. There are idiots out there. There are useful idiots to the oligarchy out there that will parrot this, but that's not most people. And we don't need to change their minds. Let's just leave them in the corner and let's talk to working people and students and people who are struggling, African Americans and Arab Americans. And so many of them stood up when they actually got to hear our message in this election. They stood up and they were ready to mobilize. So the Democrats entirely depended on silencing our campaign, silencing political opposition. That's what they rely on. And, that's our job. It's not to change people's minds. We already have the support that we need to win this race, and win future races and win lots of competition on the ground. This is all about organizing. It's all about, turning the crank on grassroots strategies and techniques for getting the word out, because that's what it is. It's about arming people with their political power and, supporting their empowerment, which is there. It's ready to be had, and it's the obstructionism of Democrats above all that prevent us from mobilizing. As Malcolm X said, we are not outnumbered, we are out organized, and we're outfunded. Those are practical problems, but they're not unsolvable.
Yep, absolutely. We want to move on to Kshama. You wanted to bring in some historical analysis to this as well.
Yeah, I think it would be very useful just on the discussion about misogyny, racism, and about for Black working class people and so on. But before that, I just wanted to say that that email that Jill read out it is not surprising. I don't know. I think I might have mentioned to Nick, but yesterday there was when my husband and I went out, but when we came back, we had several pages that said "traitor" in big font pasted on our fence outside. I mean, this is what passes for so-called civility politics of Democratic Party hacks. These are not ordinary people. I mean, we have to be clear. There are a lot of ordinary people who voted for Kamala Harris. And I will, just to on Jill's point, I mean, yes, there are a lot of people who already agree with us, but there are a lot of other people out there who can be won over if they are presented with the correct strategy of why it is that they should break from the Democrats and Republicans, why it is that we do need a new party for working people, and why that actually cannot be done without actually defeating the Democratic Party, and why it has to have an offensive strategy, and giving them the example of, unfortunately, the all too rare example of what we were able to accomplish in Seattle. I mean, Jill mentioned how the Democrats did nothing. They always used the issue of abortion rights as a way to somehow get votes, but never, and using that as a perpetual issue in order to drive a wedge between, among working class people, rather than actually doing something about abortion. They could have funded abortion clinics. In Seattle, the 8 Democrats who were on the council when I was on the council until last year, they fought against us and were defeated because we built a movement here using my office, and we were able to make Seattle an abortion sanctuary, meaning anybody from any state can come here and get an abortion and not face any kind of criminal charges. Like the city's law enforcement are not allowed to go after them. Doesn't matter what charges they have in other states. And the other thing we won that same year is through our People's Budget campaign. We want full funding for abortion rights for anybody who needs it, that's not covered by insurance. It doesn't matter which state you're a resident of, you get that funding. And that we did by expanding the Amazon tax that we won during the George Floyd protests in 2020. And so that's the kind of fighting approach that we need as an alternative to what both the Democrats and Republicans do, which is, as Jay was saying, Nick was saying, blame your fellow workers. Nick, you said blame your neighbors. I'll just reframe that and say blame your fellow workers. So the Democrats, Joe Scarborough, all these hacks, all the Democratic Party politicians, and it's not just the Democratic establishment. In today's age, if anybody says just establishment, take that as a sign that they are actually gatekeepers. It's the Democratic Party as a whole that needs to be called out. And what they do is exactly what the kind of clips you played, where they use blaming working class people as misogynist and racist as a weapon against the working people. But the Republicans do the same. They blame immigrant working class and poor people and tell the white working class people, and also for that matter, the Latino and Black working class people, that if your life sucks, if you don't have decent paying jobs, if your cities like Chicago and New York that are wealthy cities and are yet crumbling with no funding, very little funding for schools, for social services, for transportation, then you should blame the recently arriving immigrant working class and poor people. Both of these are examples of using identity against working class people. And so we need an alternative to this type of divide and conquer approach that both the Democrats and Republicans use. And so I think it is really useful to see what happened in starting with the 1920s, when you had rank and file labor really starting to get organized. But that was the same era when you had racial segregation, and it was the era of Jim Crow. And so you had Jim Crow ideas inside the union movement as well, in the AFL, in the American Federation of Labor, where the leadership was a conservative compared and very pro big business versus the rank and file that really wanted to fight back. So these were the days of Jim Crow unionism as well. And at that time, the idea of having craft unions, meaning very separated unions on the categories of specialized positions of craft workers, that was used as a weapon by the bureaucrats of the labor, the labor leadership of the AFL at that time, that refused to organize on an industrial basis. And that was the way that was the weapon they used to refuse to take on racism in the union movement. And it was rank and file workers, militant rank and file workers, organized by Marxist organizers, communist organizers, that flipped the table on that At that time, all of that effort combined, there's obviously, this is a longer story, but just to say it quickly, all of that effort culminated in 1934 with 3 major strike actions general strikes around the country in Toledo, San Francisco, and Minneapolis. And it was these strikes, all of these strikes in every single case were led by Marxists and communists. And those 3 general strikes paved the way not only for the New Deal, which was not gifted to us by FDR, but was forced on him and the capitalist class by these militant strikes. And it led to the formation of what came to be called the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, which was a pivotal step forward for Black people and against racism. And that came from militant rank and file organizing, not from the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it. And also, let me get into just a couple of super chats really quick, just to clear it out. I'll do about 10, and then we can move on really quick. So Mark Pugsley, thank you so very much for this. It says, my comrades, whenever God is giving us the last lap before Armageddon. Thank you very much for that. Roger Metal says, after Business Roundtable, I prefer the socialist one. Thank you very much. We have Baker coming in with a super sticker. Thank you so very much for that. Omar says, we need to build a Green Party. Both parties don't lose because they serve the same master. Thank you very much to Lauren L. for gifting 10 channel memberships. Appreciate it very much. None of your business says, did they set up Kamala to fail? Why not? That's a good question. We also have Peter Moorman says, Nick, you were so right about the white left. The amount of white leftists on Reddit calling for the deportations of Latinos, Muslims, Native Americans, and any other POC who voted Trump was insane. Yes, I even saw that on TikTok. Thank you for Joe Killa 300 says, I voted for Jill and Baraka as my first presidential vote. When I was 19, I proudly voted for her again with Butch. Thank you, Dr. Stein, for allowing me to vote against genocide and for the people. Thank you very much to App Lover says, what are all you guys' thoughts on having huge protests against all of our corporate media and misinformation in the streets? That's going to be kind of a lengthy response, so I'll keep that up there, but we'll have that conversation in a little while, and then we'll do one more. Thank you very much to Lucas. He says, hello to my 6 favorite people, solidarity. So thank you so very much to Luca. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was ask about Dearborn, Michigan. That seems to be a victory lap for you, Jill, to run and wave your fist around. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was really exciting to see what happened in Dearborn. And the last numbers I saw, and the count is still, not quite final, but Donald Trump came away with 47%, Kamala Harris with 27%, and our campaign came away with 21%. And that is like a huge leap forward. Given that we still had this blanket, whiteout in the media, we were not covered. This was all sort of networking. This was grassroots campaigning through the different Muslim networks in particular and the anti-genocide networks. And, we had a really, really very dedicated base of support. At the in the final days, there was a shift from some of the people who were going to vote an anti-genocide vote. There was this panic that went out that, maybe Harris wouldn't lose, that simply withdrawing votes wouldn't do it. And that community very much is dedicated to punishing politicians who commit genocide. So they were very focused above everything else. That Muslim community who's watching, scores of their relatives, 20, 40, 60, 100 and more of their extended families murdered, they did not want Kamala Harris to be reelected above all else. That was like the prime directive for that community. And while we had a lot of support from the groups that we really worked with and dialogued with, like, many of the imams, many of the mosques, many of the Muslim organizations endorsed us and supported us, like a group of 130 or more leading imams across the country who put out a letter. They're a 501c3, so they couldn't name a candidate, but they encouraged everybody not to vote for either of the major parties and to vote for an anti-genocide candidate. And then abandon Harris, which is like the major organizing group of the Muslim community, the major political group. They're a C4, and they actually endorsed us. So you had kind of this back-to-back. You had the C3 of the imams, and then you had right after them the major organization, the major Muslim political action organization endorsing us. So the groups we had extended dialogue with were very supportive, and there were several polls that had shown that. A CARE poll and the ADC, the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Coalition. They showed us actually beating Harris, equal or ahead of her, and Trump way down. So Trump kind of emerged as a late contender, both because people were panicking that maybe Harris wouldn't lose, so they gave their vote to Trump in order to be sure to drive down Harris. Part of this was also that Trump did some last-minute campaigning with the community and he made a promise that he would back out of Lebanon. Now, what good does that do? Because that still leaves the Palestinian people, being murdered and massacred continuously. And I think in Trump's victory speech, I just heard a fragment of it, but he appeared to say that Hamas had to give back the hostages, return our hostages, he said, or you will regret it. So like he's threatening that he's going to do even worse things. Who knows? So there was no guarantee there. There was a mayor, I think 2 mayors that then trotted around with him and made a big show of Arab American support for Donald Trump. So there was, some divisions within the community. The community was being played. So it wasn't as big a number as it might have been, but still, it's a huge leap forward. There's a very dedicated political action group now, which has established a Green Party chapter in Dearborn and in many areas around the world now. And this, the demographic has really shifted at our events around the country. We saw lots of young people, people of color, Arab Americans. It was really exciting to see just this whole demographic turnover going on now in the Green Party. And in Dearborn, it's kind of, it's sort of the leading edge right now. And we'll be working with Dearborn and with the new Green Party chapter there to just help keep pushing the envelope. And in fact, this is what we'll be doing really across the country. This movement doesn't end. This is as intense as ever, becoming more intense actually by the day as Israel expands its genocidal war now to the West Bank, to Lebanon, bombing Syria, bombing Yemen, and about to, have some real blowout with Iran, which is absolutely terrifying. And the draft is back here in this country. The military draft is back. People are being signed up for it. So this is extremely dangerous, threatening to the people of the world and to us. This issue, this issue isn't going away. This issue and all of these issues, the devastation of American workers, which is the flip side of our, endless war machine and its squandering of our tax dollars in the congressional budget. So suffice it to say, Dearborn is kind of a, it's sort of like the microcosm of this crisis right now. The fight is really intense here. Arab Americans who have experienced empire overseas, who have fled from the heavy hand of U.S. empire, and then who are abused here with the abuse of civil liberties, with Islamophobia and xenophobia. There is just a huge movement. Now, Muslim Americans are only like 1 or 2% of the population, but they are, they have the courage of their convictions. They're working with students, and there is a movement that's on fire. And ground zero for that fire is Dearborn. And to see them shoot up from like 0% Greens in 2020, there were something like a couple hundred Green voters, and this time there were something like 6,000 or 7,000. So, you know, this is just a huge explosion of a party, you know, for people, planet, peace, you know, and workers and democracy, and it's not going to be stopped. So it's really inspirational what's going on in Dearborn, and this will be a big focus of, you know, party efforts, of progressive efforts, anti-genocide efforts, and for myself personally, I'll be very involved in continuing to light that fire.
Yeah, we said the election, and we talked about this with Kshama not too long ago, that the election is just a pit stop. Like with to me, the work just starts at the election, and we're gonna talk about that here next soon, because I want to ask all three of my guests about the future of the movement and how can we expand the anti-genocide coalition. But that will be next. I want to pass to Sabby. I know Sabby has a lot of great exciting things coming up. Any last thoughts you have, Sabby, before you had to go? Anything you want to plug or promote? If you're there, going once, going twice. I don't know, she had to step away.
Probably had to step away for a second.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
As soon as she comes back on, you know, hopefully it'll be in a second. But yeah, so Kshama, if you want to, and then when Sabby comes back, we can pause to have Sabby head out.
Yeah, just to add to the points that Jill was making about Dearborn, I mean, this is so significant. As Jill said, the Green Party got less than 1% in 2020, and this time Jill Stein's campaign claimed 15% of the vote in that city. It's remarkable. It is just incredible. It's, you know, I don't know if Jill, you already said this number and I missed it, but the Greens went from 207 votes in 2020 to more than 7,600 votes this year. This is really incredible. And I'll just to make 2 points about this. One is to share with your viewers the Get Out the Vote effort that Workers Strike Back carried out, my organization, Workers Strike Back. I mean, we have been in Dearborn in some shape or form since September 30th, and you know, and 2 months, more than 2 months, we've had people setting their lives aside, making an enormous sacrifice. I mean, we are talking about Workers Strike Back members from Seattle, Kansas City, Chicago, Boston, Portland, Oregon, and Rochester, Minnesota. And I myself was there for many days leading up to the Dearborn rally we did on October 6th with Jill and with Abandon Harris and the many activists there. And we've talked to, at this point, we talked to thousands of people outside the masjids, you know, outside the mosques, in the university campuses, including the University of Michigan there. And also we went to a lot of events in Detroit as well. In addition to Dearborn, we also campaigned in a very working class city called Hamtramck, where actually the mayor ended up endorsing Donald Trump. And so part of our effort there, Workers Strike Back's effort there, was so crucial because there were many people who, I mean, basically that's an understatement. Let me correct myself and say we barely ran into anybody who wanted to vote for Kamala Harris and who wasn't angry about the genocide. That was not our challenge. Our challenge was making sure that people knew that Jill Stein was on the ballot, because many did not know, and when they found out, they were pleasantly acknowledged it and signed voter pledge cards, which is, you know, we did it. We organized everything in a very systematic manner, and we had voter IDs to make sure we were tracking people on what votes they had. And when they were ready to vote for Jill Stein, we had them sign a pledge card. And the moment the ballots were available, we contacted them and said, have you voted? So that's the kind of systematic effort, of course, wanted to use in Seattle as well to win our 4 elections. And so we brought all of that experience to bear in Dearborn as well. But what we noticed was it was so important for us to be on the ground there, telling people about Jill Stein being on the ballot and exciting them about it. And there was so much openness to that. And I know we're going to talk about these next steps very soon, but just to very quickly say that we also saw that Trump was taking advantage of it. Jill alluded to this, where there were billboards that said vote Trump, vote for peace. And that's completely dishonest and deceptive. And it's important that organizers, activists, volunteers are there on the ground to counter all of that. And I'll just urge, anybody who's watching this, if you are inspired by the work we have done, then please join Workers Strike Back. Go to workersstrikeback.org. I'm so glad to hear about the Green Party chapter in Dearborn. We're also launching a Workers Strike Back chapter very likely in Dearborn. And then we should, of course, talk about the February organizing conference.
All right. So thank you so very much for that. We can move on to Miss Margaret Kimberley as well. I know you're going to be heading out soon, so I'm going to make sure you get your thoughts in.
Yes, thank you. We have to, Frederick Douglass said, agitate, agitate, agitate. And I think that is a piece of advice that is always good. We have to keep mobilizing people. And I think we have to be very consciously telling people we must move towards socialism and anti-imperialism, and we cannot shy away from those terms. This is an opportunity. So many people who are liberals, they don't like Kamala, but then they're upset. Oh my God, Trump won everything. Well, that's because of the Democratic Party. That's my answer to everyone. They couldn't even, how do you raise $1 billion and you can't win? I'm sorry. What's the point of that? So our job is to mobilize our folks, to lift them up, to educate them politically, so that people know what we're up against. We're up against the duopoly is an enemy, and I guess it's a two-headed monster, but that's what I think we have to do. We cannot give up as conditions worsen, and inevitably they will. It's important for people to know why they are suffering, so they don't fall for this nonsense that the Democratic Party is there to help them. Thanks.
Yeah. And Margaret, I know you had to leave soon, but I'm gonna pass it to you first because I want to show you guys something. Since this is relevant to Dearborn, because obviously there are a lot of liberals crying right now, and there are a lot of MAGA people celebrating. But the game doesn't change to us no matter who wins. And this is what I've been tweeting about. This is what I covered yesterday. I have quite a few banger segments exposing the swamp that Donald Trump is planning to hire. He's planning on, and apparently the leading favorite to be Secretary of State under a Trump administration, Mike Pompeo. So how is that draining the swamp going, man? So you guys know this is what I'm going to be focused on over the next few years, is exposing the Zionist MAGA agenda, because they are now the ruling class that we need to expose. So if you was MAGA, and I have a lot of MAGA followers who enjoy my critiques of the Democratic Party, if you in the code, you're going to have a really hard time following me over the last few years. So Margaret, while we are short on time, I want to get your thoughts on this, because whether MAGA wins, whether liberals win, we have another election where there's one undisputed leader. So I will play this clip of AIPAC bragging about rigging this election and how they was batting at a 100% rate. So we're gonna watch this clip of AIPAC bragging, and then I'm gonna get your last thoughts on this, Margaret, as we send you off here.
It's the infusion of foreign affairs that's taking the 2024 race into an entirely new phase.
I'm a firm believer that no candidate wins an election on their own.
What I love about AIPAC is that they get behind people and they win.
AIPAC comes in, it's like someone threw you a life raft. This week, the group secured its first major victory of the election season. Fresh off of that victory, AIPAC has already set sights on its next target.
Well, you know what we got to say to AIPAC? Bring it on!
The results are in. George Latimer defeats incumbent Jamal Bowman.
Incumbent Republican Bob Good has been defeated by challenger State Senator John McGuire.
Missouri Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush, known for being part of the Squad, will no longer serve in Congress next year.
To folks in the pro-Israel community, you have no choice but to stay engaged and stay in this fight.
I just want to extend my sincere gratitude to this community for helping me get to Congress and assure everybody that you're going to have a long-term friend.
You guys see, this is not an Oppo video. This is a video that AIPAC released. This is not, you would think this is something that we put together. But no, this is what they are openly bragging about as they call Jill Stein a Russian asset to influence our elections. We have AIPAC openly influence our elections. So I'll pass to Margaret first. I know you had to head out soon, but I will ask Dr. Jill Stein and Kshama to respond as well. But let's start with Margaret Kimberley.
Yeah, it's AIPAC should have to register as a foreign agent. We have a FARA Act, Foreign Agents Registration Act. They kicked Sputnik off the air, RT off the air. They kicked African Stream, although African Stream has no relation to Russia. That's a whole other story, because they said they were agents of Russia. People are being investigated for alleged activities with Russia. AIPAC is a foreign agent and should have to register as such. And everybody who talks about foreign influence in U.S. politics, who says nothing about AIPAC, is a hypocrite. And it's difficult. The doxing, harassing, firing people, expelling students. So it's going to take, even making sure lawyers don't represent people who sue about this treatment. The Zionist lobby is a potent force, but they have to be called out. And this is foreign interference, and it's right in your face, and everybody brags about it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Margaret. I got to have you back on soon. It's always great having you on RBN. Dr. Stein, I would love you to respond to that ad. So whether it was Trump or Kamala, there will be one very similar winner. The winner of every single election, AIPAC, right? Dr. Stein, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. You know, Kamala herself got some $5 million. You know, Trump has had millions. You know, and then it was 100 million. AIPAC put 100 million into, I think, just congressional races, and you know, batting, if not 100%, then very close to it. So if this isn't foreign influence, I don't know what is. And it's so ludicrous to think that some Russian memes from this internet research agency, you know, the IRA, that really didn't have any clear relationship to Russia at all, appeared to be just some clickbait kind of advertising thing, you know, that became a major point of Russiagate was, oh, look at this Russian influence, these memes on social media, which are like just a teeny weeny fraction of like the budget that Democrats had and Republicans had for their social media campaigns. Russian expenses on these irrelevant memes, half of which weren't even published until after the election itself. You know, there was so much hype around Russian influence compared to this $100 million spent to actually take down congressional reps. It's outrageous. And in addition, you know, to you know, Russiagate and all that, look at the Uhuru 3. The Uhuru 3 who are being accused of violating FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, for what? For actually touring the U.S. to reach out and promote reparations. That advocating for reparations was considered being a Russian foreign agent. There were some incidentals that were reimbursed as part of their tour from Russia, but tiny. And, you know, nothing compared to $100 million. And what was the subject of their action? It was promoting a reparations program, not exactly, you know, promoting Russia, whereas AIPAC is all about, you know, protecting the Zionist project and genocide, and these just astounding finances and military equipment and bombs and bullets and all that. That's what that is about. There was one other thing I want to mention, which is an investigative report done by Li Fang, formerly with The Intercept. Now he has his own Substack, and he actually traced the money flowing from the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, to nonprofit organizations like the Hillel organizations and others that then changed policy and regulations at the level of colleges in order to basically eliminate freedom of speech, freedom to protest, and this ramping up of censorship and the suppression of the right to protest that took place over the summer, so that when students came back, they were just facing this very heavy hand of authoritarianism that makes it impossible or nearly impossible to hold rallies and encampments and so on against genocide. But Li Fang actually traces the flow of money to actual policies here at the college level, and also money that flowed to that resulted in the prohibitions against boycott, divestment, and sanctions at the level of, I think, 27 different state legislatures. So if this isn't FARA, violations of FARA, because the money is actually traced here and it's starting in Israel and then flowing through these nonprofits that are then changing policy here in this country. So if we were winning the election, if we were in the White House now, our campaign would be instructing the Department of Justice to take AIPAC to court for violations of FARA. And when the Uhuru 3, including Omali Yashatila, when they were accused of violating FARA, it's 15 years in prison, and it's an end of being able to buy policy. And why is that not the case for for AIPAC? And this is, I think, this is justice that needs to have its day in court.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kshama, I want to actually respond. And then we have one more question. We're going to talk about the future of the movement after this, and we will start with Stein after that. So Kshama, what's your response? It's crazy to see. I've been I did quite a few segments on how corporate media, they're even trying to convince liberals that Iran is meddling in our election. They want people to think that North Korea, and it's always conveniently the countries that the United States is sanctioning and want further conflict with. It's never some neutral. It's never like Norway. Why don't we ever get a story about like Norway influencing our election? Isn't that interesting? So Kshama, I want you to respond, because AIPAC is such a nefarious influence in our elections. Make sure you check your audio, Kshama.
Sorry, I was saying, yeah, I definitely agree. AIPAC is, and that's a correct word, nefarious influence. And I just wanted to add a few other dimensions to this discussion on AIPAC. I mean, AIPAC is basically a purveyor of evil. There's no question about that. But I think if it wasn't AIPAC, then it would be something else. My point is that, yes, absolutely, it is shocking and completely despicable that we have a U.S. state where these kinds of entities have free reign, where they can just pour in millions upon millions, in fact, tens of millions of dollars in races to defeat any shred of progressivism on the Israel-Palestine issue, and they will come down with their tens of millions of dollars. Obviously, that is horrible. But what I'm trying to say is that if we want to see something different, and if we want to deliver a defeat for agents like AIPAC, then we have to understand that they don't exist by themselves. They are serving the interests of capitalism, and in this case, U.S. capitalism, Western capitalism. So if it wasn't AIPAC, it would be something else. So I really don't believe, and I don't think we can lead people to believe, that we can solve this problem through laws and regulations. They are an agenda. AIPAC is carrying out an agenda of capitalism. And what is part of the agenda of capitalism in the Middle East is, and why this 76-year occupation has lasted these many decades, is because the Palestine region happens to be in an oil-rich region, and it is also full of other aspects of geopolitical importance for Western capitalism, along with US capitalism. And then especially in this new period where you have the US-led bloc and the China-led bloc, these competitive forces in in global capitalism, you will see them making ordinary people the pawns of their competition. So, one thing that the global capitalist class as a whole agrees on is that ordinary people can be screwed over, including with a completely horrific genocide where over 350,000 people have been slaughtered. So in that context, it's let's remember that Biden was one of the guys who said that if there wasn't an Israel, US capitalism would have created an Israel. And then you have the Saudi Arabian regime and the wealthy class of that Middle East region, the capitalists in that Middle East region, the royal family and all, just completely odious and despicable. They are all part and parcel of what is going on. And so I don't think you can just talk about AIPAC without talking about the geopolitical interests of Western capitalism. And then the other thing that I think this story, you played this whole, clip of, as you said, Nick, this is AIPAC boasting about its own efforts, successful efforts in defeating Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. And of course, Democrat Richie Torres winning his re-election with over 76%, completely horrible human being. He's also, he also, Richie Torres also, like other Democrats, has blood on his hands for this genocide. But just to explain also that what's happening here is not only AIPAC, it's also it's revealing is that the Democratic Party is where any efforts at genuine working class politics can happen, go to die. The party has successfully, they successfully put a clamp down on Bernie's campaigns. And then since then, you see Bernie downgrading himself to left cheerleader for Biden Harris, or, his recent remarks notwithstanding. But a similar process has happened that has defeated Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. Jamal Bowman lost his primary in a landslide to Latimer, and Cori Bush lost her election and primary election as well. And undoubtedly, they had tens of millions of dollars against them, but they are not mainly or only about the electoral math of AIPAC cash. They are also, this story is also about the betrayals by Bowman and Bush of their working class base, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, of their working class base, and the total loss of enthusiasm for them and their campaigns. This is why our efforts in Seattle, and granted it's Seattle, but it's the same kind of battleground. The Democratic Party, big business, billionaires like Bezos, they are all against us. And a similar thing plays out for congressional races. And working class leaders, first of all, need to break from the Democratic Party, but even that won't be enough. They will need to take the establishment head on. They will need to build movements and inspire workers to fight. So what happened was both Bowman and Bush faced the brunt of ruling class opposition, but they also faced the alienation of working people who refused to come out and fight them. And the lesson of this story, the moral of this story is you can't serve both working people and the corporate elite. You have to choose. And if you're going to represent working people, then you need to do it unambiguously and relentlessly, because if you betray working people, it will come back and haunt you.
That was such a brilliant, perfect take, Kshama. I couldn't say it better myself. I love the breakdown. James, let's read a few super chats so we're not completely buried. And then the last segment of the stream, because we don't want to take too much more of Kshama's and Dr. Stein's time, we will talk about the future of the left. And James, I'll let you ask the question. But James, I'll pass to you for some super chats, and then we get to our last segment of the stream here soon. I know a lot of people in the chat been asking this too. I know a lot of people wanting to hit 5%. A lot of people will focus on that singular goal, which is cool and important. But we're going to talk about and have a serious discussion about what's coming next, because to me, the election was just a sideshow. You guys know how I feel about electoral politics. I was just here to take advantage of the moment and use that to organize people. But anyway, it's not about me. I'll ask you guys about that later. James, I'll pass it to you, and then we move on to our next segment next.
All right, so we're just going to do about 10 or so, and I'll make this very quick. So let's get to our first one. We're going to go to Baker. Thank you so very much for the generous super sticker. Means so much to us. Keeps the lights on. Thank you very much. Thank you to Andrea. Says, what a lineup, RBN. I'm proud of myself and all the people who had the courage to resist. Yes. Jill Stein was definitely a facilitator for that. We appreciate it. Louise Brooks says, I proudly voted for Jill and Butch in Virginia. Yes, Kshama. I will not reward a party for genocide. I hate how they are vilifying others and taking no ownership
Can I
for
just
their.
say something real quick? Doesn't that feel good? Like, doesn't it feel good not to be complicit with genocide? And I'm proud. I told the story on Twitter, and you guys just got bare with me because I'm proud. Because both my brothers voted Green Party down ballot, and my brother brought it up multiple times, like, yeah, I voted. Like, and I can tell he's not even political, but I can tell. And Joe, I think you met him in Chicago, but you can tell he's not political, but he like, yeah, he just feel good that he didn't vote for that. But anyway, go ahead, James. I promise you, it's
Side note,
we don't put stock in votes, but it feel good not to be complicit with that shit, right? But go ahead, Jaybe.
Side note, I'm proud of Kshama and Jill, but let's continue on. So thank you to Luca says, Jill fought for us. I appreciate her commitment. Thank you very much. To Pitchforks Are Coming and they've been a member for 20 months says, Jill, what are your plans to lead this movement? We'll be getting into that in a second. Okay. So hang on to that in your head. Okay. Thank you very much for the generous super chat. Landrew says, wrote Jill in. Brianna Joy Gray, Worker Strike Back Party 2028. Now this is the time to begin the revolution. Much love to you all. Free Palestine. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. Yassine says, I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude to all of you for the exceptional hard work you put in leading up to this election. I did vote for Jill, by the way. So thank you very much. We'll do two more. And then we have Gang Green Thumb says, I don't like that Trump won, but I'm glad Kamala lost. All right. And then we have Italian Stallion says, I think Newsom is next. Okay. Oh, geez. Here we go. So thank you very much for that. So as far as the movement's concerned, as far as where do we go from here? What do you think is the best way forward for us, not just electorally, but organizing on the ground? What do you think is the best one? And I'll start off with you, Joe.
I think, we come out of this election, like Nick says, this is just, this is an opportunity to organize, and an opportunity to resist and to build solidarity. And we come out of this election, in the face of genocide and in the face of, just an assault on working people and our democracy and our healthcare system and education. The genocide is kind of a, it's kind of a symbol. It's kind of a microcosm of empire in all of its, brutality. It's brutal to people overseas where genocide is being committed. And to Kshama's earlier point, the defense secretary for Ronald Reagan also said that Israel is the unsinkable battleship for the U.S. in the Middle East, safeguarding basically U.S. control over Middle Eastern oil and fossil fuels. And so this is the exercise of empire and capitalism and oligarchy, and it's kind of grinding to a halt. My country is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. Well, that was true like back in the 1960s. Actually, it was true long before that as well, pretty much since the Second World War. But it's intensifying. It's become totally, dangerous and unsustainable and ruthless and vicious. And people are being slaughtered right before our very eyes now. And we're paying for that. We're actually paying for the expansion of this genocide. When Israel went into Lebanon, then the Harris-Biden administration rewarded Israel with an additional $8 billion in military aid as Israel is expanding this war. And, Harris herself declared Iran the major threat to the U.S. and declared that we would have the most lethal army, in the world in history. And Trump actually he echoes that in his own way. Yeah, he's going to be a peacemaker, right? He's going to be a peacemaker by brandishing, really vicious power all over the world. So, how likely is it that that we will be at war with Iran? This is a real risk that we're going to get dragged into that war, and that we have the draft here, and boots on the ground have been promised. Israel does not have the person power that it needs. It's trying to draft the religious Jews right now, and they are refusing. And Israel cannot fight this war by itself. So who's going to fight it for them? So there's just really scary danger ahead, and we are being impoverished here as well as endangered by these expanding wars. This is empire. This is end stage capitalism. That's just come down heavy. So, which is to say that this crisis is only going to expand. It's not going away. And where we go from here is to springboard off of the progress that we've made. We emerge from this race with extraordinary, unprecedented voter suppression and just vicious anti-democratic strategies being practiced against people-powered voices and people-powered politics. And we need to continue building the resistance and to build on that solidarity. And that solidarity, in part, was, Workers Strike Back and Kshama working with us as Greens, working with Arab Americans and Abandon Harris. We really had quite a thing going, and it was just unbelievably exciting, an unprecedented kind of synergy that crossed cultures and religions and no religion and youth and generations. It felt like this was a huge breakthrough, and the Democrats were terrified, absolutely quaking in their boots, and just coming down with a very heavy hand of censorship and canceling us entirely, which speaks to our power. It speaks to how much we are rattling their cages and what the opportunity, the moment is to continue that. So Kshama will talk in a moment about this this conference that we're going to do together, kind of an organizing and planning conference, looking at how do we get political and build the solidarity in a really in a way that can't be stopped. But we also we keep firing on all cylinders. We're looking at, right out of the starting gate, running candidates for local office and helping to support them and, getting people into city councils so that they can not only support the ceasefire resolutions, but also the divestment resolutions at the level of city councils. And helping to support continuing, demonstrations and rallies and economic boycotts, supporting workers. I think it was the UAWs, their committee that's opposing the genocide. They are now trying to really get the UAW to support a weapons boycott and to come out in favor of that, which would be so huge. If we could get the international longshoremen to support that as well, then you've got your boycott. You've got your weapons boycott.
That's a lot of stuff you mentioned, Jill Stein, but it's weird because I'm confused. I'm very confused because AOC told me that you showed up just every 4 years. So what gives?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. So much for AOC and her, complete BS, for which she was really dragged on social media for her incredibly pompous, condescending, patronizing lecture about how to organize if you're like a Democratic Party ally and not under attack. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely nonsense. So there's a lot we can do, and people are really raring to go. Remember, 68% of Americans oppose the genocide and want an immediate ceasefire, and over 60% want a weapons boycott. And there was also 52 countries now, have signed on to an international, a global weapons boycott for Israel. So, this war, this genocide, is not long for this world. We the people in this country and around the world are really mobilizing to stop it. And just because the election is over, we're not stopping. And those of us who are involved are going to, in our campaign, and that includes, our allies in Workers Strike Back and Abandon Harris and the Arab American and Muslim American community. We have had a bond here forged, in the fires of a genocide, and there is intensive commitment now to just keep building on this. And as Kshama's saying, this is not just the genocide, it's not just the empire, this is also, capitalism, the war on working people, and and the war on the climate. We're facing kind of end stage everything right now if we're going to allow the parties of war on Wall Street to call the shots. So this is a big and very deep political, economic, social fight, and we're pulling out all the stops here because we're running out of time, and every day counts. So we're gonna make good on the wonderful development. I must say, there were so many people in this race. I would be walking in public places or in airports, and people would come running up to me, complete strangers, crying, and just with hugs of incredible gratitude that we're speaking out and that we're fighting for them. And there's so much goodwill and energy behind this. We are going to be unstoppable, and this will leverage, I think, changes that go, we have to stop the genocide, but we got to do a whole lot more than that. And I think we have the energy and the commitment to keep building on this. So I'm just extremely encouraged by where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful answer. And there have been a lot of laughs that we had as a community, especially laughing at liberal tears over the last week. We have fun on the channel, we cry on the channel, but never remember the core goal of Revolutionary Blackout. And I was talking to James, we were talking after the election, and we were talking about how starting next year, bro, we're going to hit the ground so hard. In the light of fighting this MAGA Zionist agenda, who will be teaming with Chuck Schumer's, by the way. Chuck Schumer already said that he plans on proposing an anti-Semitism bill, with Donald Trump and the MAGA already said they're down to sign to limit free speech and crack down on dissent. So it will be RBN, Dr. Stein, Workers Strike Back, and Abandon Harris will be on the front line of that battle. And I am looking towards that battle. There's nothing but fighting and revolution. So as the liberals are quitting politics, you guys saw David Doe. I quit. I want to get a regular job. So as the liberals are quitting politics, I'm extremely happy. Get out of the way and allow the real fires to start. So Kshama, what is your plan? And this, you guys realize we had Dr. Stein on RBN even before she announced her candidacy multiple times, because it was always about building that coalition even before she ran for president. Way before that, and that will be our plan moving forward. So, Kshama, what is your plan, and what is your message to the left at this moment, right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to really look forward to. I really agree with what Jill was saying, that tens of millions of people are unhappy with what is happening, not only the genocide, but also the crisis that they face in their day-to-day life. And what we lack at this moment is not the desire on the part of what you would call the rank and file of the working class to fight back. What we have a dire shortage of is principled leadership that is politically clear about what needs to be done, and a leadership that has the steely backbone to actually do that, because actually doing what needs to be done requires incredible amounts of courage. And I'll just say that my former organization, Socialist Alternative, which I was a part of for 15 years, the reason that myself and many others left Socialist Alternative and formed Revolutionary Workers, in addition to what we're doing, which is building Workers Strike Back as well, which is a broader organization. Revolutionary Workers are for those who have reached revolutionary conclusions, Marxist conclusions. But the reason we did that was because Socialist Alternatives leadership is in that category now, where they talk about socialist revolution, they talk about building a third party, party for the working class, they talk about all of this, but they're not willing to carry anything out. The first sign of having to oppose the labor leadership, and then they refuse to do that, and we don't accept that. We are here to actually fight back, and that means being it means building that kind of leadership that is able to withstand the relentless attacks by and pressure from the entities that represent the interests of capitalism. And we know that they will, and I've seen this throughout my 10 years of being on the city council here in Seattle, they will use both the carrot and the stick. So we will need that kind of leadership, and I want to come back to that point in a second. But before that, I wanted to just echo what Nick was saying, that yes, it is so important that we have taken a stand in not supporting genocide, and history is going to, history's annals will write about this. History is also going to hold judgment on labor leaders like Sean Fain and Liz Schuller, the president of the American Federation of Labor, who cheerleaded Kamala Harris at a time of genocide and at a time when Kamala Harris and the entire Democratic Party has blood on their hands. History will hold judgment on that. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank Jill and her campaign, including her campaign manager, Jason Call. I mean, just tremendous self-sacrifice that they have engaged in, and especially Jill for being willing to take on the relentless attacks against her. I mean, all of this is really, that is the kind of leadership we need. And I also agree with Jill. This is quite a thing that we have been able to accomplish. Jill's campaign, the Green Party, Abandon Harris, Worker Strike Back, and I would include the Revolutionary Blackout Network as well. In that, I would include the people in Due Dissidents, Keaton and Russell as well, because these are some of, these, we literally have a handful of people who have been willing to take the correct position, both against the genocide, against the Democratic and Republican parties, and in this election period as a whole. So the individuals who have, public figures who have shown courage are probably literally, you can count on the fingers of your hand. So taking this forward concretely, as Jill mentioned, we are organizing a conference in February 22nd will be the organizing conference, and February 23rd will be Worker Strike Back's inaugural in-person national convention. And so we invite everybody to come to both events, but especially if you can come, if it's just one event, then at least come for the organizing conference. Really looking forward to having Jay, Nick, Sabby, Jill, Jason, everyone at that. And we need you.
Oh, James, you going?
Sorry,
Shama. James, you going? we need to get RBN up there.
Maybe has to go.
Yeah.
If I can get a transplant by then.
It's
fucking James, I'll pay for your ticket if I have to, dude. We gotta get you up there, bro. We gotta do it. But
yes,
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm glad you said that, and I really agree with you, Nick, that the inability to pay for your plane ticket or accommodation should not be a barrier. We should do collective fundraising in order to make that happen. Worker Strike Back is at the ready. We'll be doing fundraising anyway, so we would be delighted to do collective fundraising. We want to make sure that all the activists, all the working people who want to come and fight back. It doesn't mean you have to be a political activist. If you're watching this and you're just a regular, ordinary working class person and you want to fight back, we want you at this organizing conference. It's not about leaders coming and holding forth. It's about hundreds of people coming together and discussing. And so we really need everyone there. And then I just want to talk about other things that, about what needs to come out of this organizing conference and what we need to do going forward. Obviously, we need major strike actions, and a few of us are not going to make that happen. And that's why in Worker Strike Back, we keep orienting our message to working people as a whole, because ordinary working people, rank and file union members, they will play the pivotal role in building strike actions. But those strike actions also need political leadership. And that political leadership often will not come from the majority of the labor leadership. Part of the labor leadership's flaws, weaknesses are that they are refusing to break from the Democratic Party. But that same problem, it directly relates to what we see as a real epidemic in the labor leadership, which is business unionism, meaning the unwillingness to fight against the bosses. The idea, they follow this idea that the labor movement, your responsibility as a leader is to mediate between the bosses and the workers. That is not the role of a labor leader. The role of a labor leader is to organize and mobilize the rank and file into militant action against the bosses, because the bosses' interests are diametrically opposed to the interests of the workers. So it's not a question of mediating or compromise. It's a question of fighting hard and winning as much as you can through going on strike, through mobilizing the wider community into strike solidarity, all of that. And look at what the Boeing workers were able to win despite a completely moribund leadership that was forced to go on strike because the rank and file voted to go on strike. The rank and file voted to stay on strike, but the leadership refused to escalate the strike action, put all kinds of obstacles as they could. And yet the workers did win significantly out of this. They did not win the pensions that they wanted to. But that's the thing. If we want to win big, we got to fight big. And the fighting big kind of ideas are not going to come from labor leaders who tie themselves to the Democratic Party and who think that they have to compromise with the bosses, with the billionaire class. And so I think all of this leads to the questions of, okay, what is the larger strategy then? What needs to come out of this February conference? I think we need to understand, and Nick and Jaybe, you guys have spoken to this many times. We reject electoralism. As a Marxist and as a member of Workers' Strike Back and Revolutionary Workers, I reject electoralism also, by which I mean that mainly focusing on trying to run candidates for office and then that leading to then rationalizing, okay, then let's run Democrat or let's support Democratic Party. That all of that idea that thinking that your main power as working people is through these parties and through the elections and through elections, that defining electoralism as that, I completely reject it. It's primarily got to be about mass movements. However, mass movements of ours, including now, which is the anti-war movement, if we are to win any victories, those mass movements do need the political clarity that you have to be independent of the Democrats and Republicans. Here is where the idea of parties becomes important. We do need a new party for the working class, because the single most important obstacle to building successful movements has been this hamstringing of movements by telling them that they have to support the Democratic Party, by the leadership of movements supporting the Democratic Party. You've seen the BLM misleaders, the Sunrise Movement misleaders, and we've seen other movement leaders also act as misleaders because they act as gatekeepers on behalf of the Democratic Party. We have to reject gatekeeping absolutely entirely. We have to reject careerism entirely. And for all of that, we will need a new party. But as I said before, the new party needs to be fundamentally different, meaning it has to be based in social movements. It should run candidates, but I wouldn't say actually that its primary goal even should be to run candidates. Yes, we should run candidates, but I want to be totally clear. It would be far too easy for new elected representatives, even from a new party, to be absorbed into the political system, because you might get elected as independent in name, but once you are in office, as I have seen firsthand, they will come after you with everything they have got if you fight against them. And so if you don't understand that your primary role is to be a disruptor of politics in the halls of government, of capitalism, and that your primary goal is to build movements to back you up so that you can actually, together you can win some victories and deliver defeats to the Democrats and Republicans, then you will completely fail. It is better. It would be better to not run for one single elected office than for this new party to elect representatives who betray the movement and are not held accountable. So I will say that the main priority is not immediately running candidates. The main priority is building the building blocks of what we need in terms of an actual real life successful movement, including ending the genocide. Ending the genocide won't be straightforward. It will need an almighty movement. And the only reason that the Vietnam War was ended was because millions of workers took to the streets. There were major strike actions, and the war was ended during Richard Nixon's reign. Nixon was a warmonger like all the other presidents, but they were forced to, but both the Democrats and Republicans were forced to end the war because they had all revolutionary movements on their doorstep. They knew that they did not concede on that and many other things, including Roe v. Wade, that movements would actually demand much more. And so whenever the bosses give concessions, it is because they're afraid of something even more challenging in front of them. And that is the basis. That's the fighting strategy mindset. That's understanding that is going to be the backbone of what we are going to be able to do. And so I will say, just to put it bluntly, we are not going to end the genocide on the basis of running somebody because they're Arab or Muslim or something like that. No, we are going to be able to end the genocide if we have an anti-war movement that understands that both the Democrats and Republicans, the parties are completely rotten. We cannot have illusions in either Trump or the Democratic Party, and that we will need to build independently, that we will need rank and file workers to go on strike. All of that needs to happen in order to be able to end this war. And we need that party. To be clear, I don't think this new party is going to be formed right away. I don't want people to have illusions in that either. We have to have a sober assessment of what we can do and what we are going to be able to accomplish. But what I am doing is putting the ideas forward, because those are the ideas we want to discuss in February. This new party, when we build it, it has to be accountable to working people. Its representatives should accept only the average worker's wage. As I said, we have to fight against careerism. And I'll say one more thing. When we do build this party, and we will need much more of a momentum in order to do that. Again, I want to be 100% clear about that. But when that does happen, and even before that, let's assume that the anti-war movement really makes major gains major momentum because of strike action and because of millions of people coming out on the streets. Then what will happen is that you will see the so-called progressives in the Democratic Party, them making overtures to the leaders of the movement, trying to get them back into the Democratic Party, and then acting as gatekeepers against the real militant leadership of these movements. This has happened again and again and again that we have seen in Seattle. So our goals have to be very clear. No gatekeeperism, no careerism. Those are the things we need to discuss. And when we do form the party, we will, but we should not artificially say we're going to form a party without millions, joining us. We will need much more than that. But let's build the building blocks of that in the February conference.
We got a lot of work to do. I know I'm looking forward to the conference. I will be there. Seattle treated me really great last time I visited you guys there. James, there was a banger stream. I think it was a very important huddle for our community post-election. It's always good to end on Kshama because she always brings that revolutionary optimism and clear direction that we need. So, James, any last thoughts as we continue to wrap the stream? We have sent Kshama and Jill Stein off here, and I know we got a lot of super chats to get through as well. James, anything else you want to add as we move on and begin to wrap up here soon?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, you both, as well as Margaret Kimberley, for coming on to be able to really do this post-election debrief so that we can see and from a clear-eyed perspective of where we go from here, because we all knew the turnout was either going to be corporations win or corporations win. So we're trying to go a third way, and I just really want to thank you for that. And in fact, before you guys go, I want to share the poll that we actually took. Yes, we did a poll. So here's the question. Who do you expect to win with 1,223, 24, 26, 28 votes? Kamala got 13%. Donald Trump and corporations got 69%. Third parties got 5%, and 13% said, I don't know. But yes, everybody guessed that the corporations would be the standard bearer for this election. So thank you very much. Really,
Raytheon and Boeing won another election. Goldman Sachs is undefeated, the undisputed United States election king. Congratulations to Goldman Sachs once again. Dr. Stein, any last words that you say? And then we got to get through these super chats, James. I'll give Kshama and Dr. Stein last words. Any last word you guys have as we wrap up?
So just real quick, piggybacking on what Kshama said, because we haven't had a chance to debrief. We just had this, really wonderful synergy and solidarity in this presidential race. And it's an election. And so you use the vehicle of the election to build solidarity and a movement that goes way beyond the election. And I'm just so grateful, and the energy of that is really good, and it feels like the chemistry is really good. And Greens are very movement oriented, and we run elections, we run candidates, but we're very movement friendly and kind of grounded in movements. And this will be the first chance that we have to like really sit down and brainstorm and think about how do we build on something that just feels so right and so necessary. And everybody's talking about solidarity, and how do we create a vehicle for that solidarity that is not going to sell out, that cannot be co-opted, and that can build on this just really exciting, the urgency of the moment, just this dire necessity of the moment, and this feeling of real optimism that's coming out of this election and this exercise of real solidarity that happened. So I just, wanted to add that, because Kshama and I have not had a chance to talk at all about where we go from here, but it just feels like there's a good thing happening here, and we got to do some real serious brainstorming about how to really expand it.
Yeah, Kshama, any last words you have? And we'll put you guys in the back after this. And then we read some super chats. I was trying to put some super chats on the screen that was mentioning you guys by name. So I apologize, guys. I'll try to show as much as we can. I don't want to take their entire night, though. So, Kshama, anything you want, any last thoughts you have, or any final parting words as I find some more super chats to show you guys?
I just wanted to agree with Jill that yes, we do need to debrief Jill. By the way, we should definitely do that, and maybe we should have a meeting of several of us in preparation for the February conference. I think that would be a good idea. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I know, Nick, you mentioned it, but just to make sure people know, the February conference is happening in Seattle on February 22nd. So like I said, please, if you want to build something out of this, a real fight back in the United States, working class fight back, if you want to end the genocide, we need you there. We need Abandon Harris there. We need Revolutionary Blackout Network there. And we need working class people who are watching this from anywhere. Like I said, if finances are a barrier, then we should try to overcome that barrier, because it is important for us all to be in person, because we are going to discuss strategy there as well. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm gonna pop you guys in the back anytime, and I'm definitely going as long as I don't get shot or something. Like I'll be there in Seattle in February, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. So I'm gonna pop Dr. Stein and Kshama in the back, and now James, I'll pass to you because I always love your style of reading super chat. So let's pop it to you to wrap the stream up. I guess I'll do an announcement. I will be live tomorrow. I have a journalist joining me, and I see it's trending now on Twitter, but exactly what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, how Mike Pompeo is like the favorite of being Secretary of State. And I saw a chat. I don't know if I lost it. I think it was a super chat I saw where let me see if I can find. Here it is from Kinkle. Scott Ritter said today on Garland Nixon, if Trump brings Mike Pompeo in, it's over. What do you guys expect? What do you guys expect? That's exactly what's going to happen. I told you guys it was going to happen. That's why I'm not convinced that Trump is going to end the Ukraine war. And before I pass you, I'm going to read this chat because these are relevant to what I was covering recently. If you guys haven't seen it, I just released a hotspot today. And it's on my Twitter if you guys haven't checked it out. Well, I talk about this. And where Trump proposed this Ukraine, his transition team, to be clear, proposed a Ukraine peace plan. I'm sorry to break it to people, though. Russia has no reason to accept it. So it's not going to happen. Because Russia is dominating the front lines, and Trump is like, hey, yo, we will continue to send Ukraine weapons, and we will freeze the front line, and we will invite Ukraine to join NATO 20 years later. Why would Russia accept that deal when Russia has no reason to? And now you guys see the massive blunder of Boris Johnson, for example, taking the peace deal when Russia was down and ready to negotiate. Yeah, that was the problem, because now, and Russia has said it so many times before, they don't trust the West. And now that it was dragging this war, which had a cost on their men and forced them to use resources, now they say, bro, we're not negotiating on the West's terms. Now, This is what the Russia has said. We don't know if they're going to change their tune. I hope they do. Like, we hope they change their tune, right? And instead of a peace proposal, I don't think they will. I will be covering these things more in detail tomorrow. So make sure you guys tune in my live stream. I'll be talking about Mike Pompeo, the Trump transition team. There's still a lot to break down this week. So I'm going for my 5th stream in a row this week. So that's tomorrow. So Jaybe, I'll pass it to you for the super chats to read the rest of them.
All right. So let's get to.
Hope you don't mind turning your camera off. I'm tired of being on camera.
Yeah. It's all good. So just checking to see if we have any tips on Rockfin. Looks like we're good there. I'm also going to check to see if we have any Rumble rants on the Rumble side to see if we have any of those as well. I didn't see any throughout the stream, so I think we're pretty much good. Yes, we are good. So let's get into these super chats and let's get going. So, and then I also have a couple of regular chats that I want to highlight too as well, because I think that's going to be really cool to highlight. So we have ARJ 1997 says, are Dems and liberals being nihilistic after their second corporate girl boss candidate was defeated again? You know what? This is actually a really good point, because I think the nihilism, if we're actually going according to the actual definition of nihilism, is really just throwing anything against the wall and see if it sticks. This is exactly what happened with people like Kamala Harris. That was the person that was any dim will do, right? And so this is exactly what happened with her. And it goes to show that even when you run just any random standard issue Democrat that runs, especially that runs to the right, then they are doomed to fail. So thank you very much for that, ARJ. We also have Christian coming in saying, we adore you, RBN and crew. Thanks for all of you up there for being here for us. Thank you so very much, Christian. That means a lot to us. I really appreciate it. We got Gio coming in and saying, I love how Dems accuse Latino men of electoral misogyny, like Claudia Sheinbaum didn't get elected in Mexico. Yep, absolutely. Like, they literally elected a woman president after AMLO. So, Love, Air, and Thunder says, great panel. Thank you so very much for that. And of course, did you get your answer, Naz? I hope you, Nazim, you got your answer. So thank you very much for that as well. Let's continue on. We have here, Gaza West says, big shout out and lots of love for Jill. She's fighting the good fight. Thank you so very much for that. Christian says, very thankful for Jill allowed me to vote for my conscience. Thank you, Jill. You know, and that's interesting because a lot of us, you know, those of us especially who voted for Claudia De La Cruz, Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Joe Stein, you know, we actually, you know, when we bubbled that name in, we didn't have this feeling of, you know, dread. And we didn't have this feeling of, well, you know, I just, my conscience is bothering me afterwards. You know, no, I had a clear conscience after voting. So it was cool. Thank you very much for that. Hinkle says a vote for Jill Stein was a moral vote for Trump. Thank you very much for that. WV Watson says WV Watson had gifted Revolutionary Blackout membership. Thank you so very much, WV Watson. Appreciate that. ABCD, yeah, says it was my honor to vote for Dr. Stein for the 3rd time. Well, very nice, very nice. Thank you very much for that. CEB Applejack says you can't vote uncorrupt into a corrupt office. Look at AOC. We need to stop voting, get in the streets, and take back our country. Thank you very much for that. Cool Blue coming in saying, I was born in Dearborn, Michigan. I'm in the area. I applaud citizens, voters denying Democrats carriage. Likewise to other Michigan cities. Democrats need to win Wayne County by +35 to be able to win Michigan. Harris did not reach. No, and Harris should have actually came out to Dearborn. She should have went to Dearborn. She should have went to Flint. She should have went to Ann Arbor. She should have went to, she should have went, but she didn't go.
This is the point I make. Sorry, James, but this is a point I make all the time, and I want liberals to realize this. And in I tell you guys this all the time. I don't really hate. Actually, I don't hate people who are propagandized. I view them as victims. I hate the propagandist, which is why you often see me diss TYT, calculating, because these are the people who lead the people who are propagandized off a cliff. There are a lot of Gen Z young liberals that are going through some shit right now, fam. And they're going to reach the same conclusion I did 10 years ago. How the Democratic Party made a coordinated decision to lose. Why? Kamala would have won if she just pretended to care about ending the genocide in Israel. And I'm sorry, I mean in Palestine. What a misspeak. The genocide in Palestine, right?
Yeah.
But she made the decision to sacrifice the election in order to defend the interests of Zionists. So if you are one of those young liberals, and I was one of those people during the Obama era, where I thought the reason why things was bad was because we were just simply unsuccessful as the Democratic Party of getting things done. I didn't realize at that time that the Democratic Party was choosing to lose in order to uphold right-wing politics. And we have seen that on the largest scale ever this election, because they told these young liberals who are propagandized, but they are well-meaning, that Donald Trump is a fascist that we must defeat. So those liberals, and I'm talking about the good faith ones, because this will happen to the good faith ones. The good faith ones will re-examine what the Democrats have done. They will realize that the Democratic Party have chosen to lose to a guy they call a fascist in order to protect Israel. And I promise you, there's a lot of these Gen Z liberals that are going to be coming our way here soon. It's inevitable. I don't remember my original point. I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. Great points, by the way. CEB Applejack says, I'm an anti-word journalist. Shout out Jaybe. Nobody would ever be able to move them away from war. How were they ever lesser evil? Propaganda. That's pretty much what it is. I mean, you can't get, that many people believing, that about them while they're doing horrible genocides in our face without it just being propaganda. So yeah, that's pretty much the answer I have. And I think you actually know the answer to that too. You're just asking a rhetorical question for us to really think about. But thank you very much, CEB. Apple Lover says, what do you guys think? What are all your guys' thoughts on having huge protests against all our corporate media and its misinformation in the streets? See, here's the thing. There's a difference between organizing and mobilizing. Mobilizing means getting in the streets, holding up signs, making your voices heard. Organizing, right, is getting something moving on the ground, even if the general public doesn't really know about it, but you're moving things in order to change the system. And you're not making your demands known to the people at the top of the system, but you're circumventing the system in a way. And this is where things like mutual aid and building dual power and things like that happen. And this is one of the reasons why the conference that Kshama was talking about is so important, is that it's going beyond mobilizing. Because mobilizing is good to get the word out. But mobilizing is the rhetoric, organizing is the physical action. So I can say what I want all day, but is it actually going to move things, right? It can get people fired up, but what are you doing to really activate people in order to make things happen for where the rubber meets the road? And the thing is that, yes, speaking out against them, that's good, but we also got to do the actual organizing on the ground for that. So let's continue. All right, so we also have, let's see, CEB says, Dr. Stein, with the way both parties mobilized to crush grassroots, like both times with Bernie, why continue to play electoral politics? It gets the word out. It gets the word out against both parties so that people wake up.
I have to make something clear, because there's a lot of people who are kind of confused about this. You guys understand that the whole thing about not voting, not engaging in electoral politics. That's more of an anarchist point of view. I'm not an anarchist. Marx was clear. Lenin was clear that even within a capitalist structure, we need to build our own political parties. There's nothing in Marxism that says don't engage in electoralism. They say don't engage in capitalist bourgeoisie electoralism. So I feel like there are a lot of people who get that confused. As Marxists and socialists, we are supposed to be building political parties. Supposed to. I want people to understand that. Yeah. And if you have criticism of the Green Party, that's okay. But the Green Party is an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist organization I feel like is worthy of working with. That's just my opinion. But go ahead, James.
All right, thank you very much. Justin B says, also a Green Party organizer since 2016. I'm looking forward to building our base of candidates for local races in 2025 and congressional races in 2026. Hoping to have a strong push to elect Greens to state and federal offices. Just to let you guys know, we're going to be having a governor's race in Florida in 2026. So, look, I think that Florida is very fertile for somebody who is anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist, really pro-worker. So I'm just saying. Kinko said, voted Stein in 2012 against Obama, voted Stein in 2016 against Hillary, again in 2024 against Kamala. Thank you, dear Jill, for your selfless service to our country. Thank you very much to that, Kinko. Kinko also says, Scott, oh yeah, you already read this earlier. Oh my God, if Mike Pompeo comes back. Ugh. Anyway, CEB Applejack says Trump is.
I read that one too.
You read that? Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
SB says to everyone, should we try to convince the 200 elected DSA officials to ditch the Dems and join the Greens? Also, Director Adam McKay has said wish to join up. Look, here's the thing. They have to, if they're willing to do that, I think that they have to divorce themselves from even thinking that they can just put reins on capitalism in order to make things work. The Green Party is an anti-capitalist, ecological and climate party. So, you got to be prepared to go against capitalism, full-throated instead of wanting to just put, guardrails on it. So thank you very much for that. So we have Harrison, friend of the show, says, thank you, Dr. Stein, for fighting for the good fight. # People Planet Peace. CEB says, what stops a third party from being just as corrupt after winning power as Dems or Republicans?
That will happen when if you have a bottom organization that's ran horizontally, which is what I support, and holding people accountable, building community. I don't know what you guys expect to happen. There's not a win button, guys. If we was to build a party, there will be corrupting influences. There were people who try to infiltrate, like Howie Hawkins. What I feel from a lot of people is they want to build a party, but they don't want to do none of the hard work. What happens if you build a party? Let's say you start a new party, you get 100 people. Then you get 10 people who join who you disagree with. Will you throw the party away because 10 people infiltrated it? Or will you work to improve it? No one's going to bail you out. No one's going to bail us out. It's upon us to hold the parties that we are part of accountable. There's not going to be a miracle party that comes. There's not going to be a miraculous leader that comes that's perfect. It's continuous work, fam. When people say, oh, Jill Stein hit 5%. Nigga, there's no button to hit 5%. That's what the people do. That's us. It's us to make sure the party that good. You guys understand? I'm not going off on this guy. I see him in the con. I'm not trying to go off on you. I'm not going hard on you. I'm just talking. I'm not trying to go out for you, bro. I appreciate the super chat. I just want people to understand. I see a lot of these comments where they expect the Green Party to be successful without any sacrifice, any work. Do you guys want to see the Green Party successful? Do you want to build a successful party? Because it's going to take work. It's going to take people making wrong steps. And I know this from having RBN. And we've been through our ups and downs. You're not going to have an organization without flaws, period. It's upon us to come in and hold each other accountable, which is the attempt, which we are trying to do. Anyways, go ahead, Jaybe. I appreciate the comment. I'm not trying to go hard at this guy. I legitimately appreciate your comment. I'm not trying to go hard at you. I'm just trying to explain something that I've seen a lot in the left. You know what I mean? A lot of the people just expect a magical third party to come and save us. And then not this guy. I'm not talking about this guy, but like the crystal ball. What did the crystal ball say? Crystal ball says, I would love to have a third party, but third party not viable. If a third party pop up, then yes, I support it. And that's the American mindset. They're like, yeah, we'll support a third party. If a perfect third party comes out of nowhere and already have 50%, how do you think we get there? Mm-hmm. The process that this guy, who I appreciate, is bringing up is we hold each other accountable and we root out corruptions within our movement when we see it, because it's inevitable. That's my opinion. Feel free to criticize me, but that's what I've been thinking about. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Jaybe.
All right. Thank you very much for that, CEB. ABCD yeah says, I got my mom's sister, lifelong Dems, to vote green. Thank you very much for that, ABCD. All right. We have Black in the Empire. Good to see you, homie. Says, keep up the good work. Thank you. That means a lot from you. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much for the generous super stickers. Joseph Lanholm, thank you very much for this. All right. GB Black has been a member for 20 months. Wow. That's a while. Thank you very much. Double check you like the video. Yes. If you guys have not, please make sure to like the stream. Appreciate it, GB Black. Compassion is power. It says animal rights are the logical extension of human rights. We cannot be liberated from capitalism without animal liberation. Thank you very much for that. Andrew Beisel says, Kshama, does it will worker strike back work with IWW? Yeah, I wish she was still here for that one, but unfortunately we didn't have time. But thank you very much for that. Hollywood says, Joe Stein get off the stage, got 0.5% of the vote. The Greens are also rigged their primaries against a socialist. You know what? Here's the thing. Why don't you say that against the Democrats and Republicans and then get back to us? Yeah. So PC 3244, thank you very much for the generous super sticker. I appreciate it very, very much. Kinkle says the Democratic Party is the right-wing arm of the Republican Party. Michael C. Hudson, your comments. Yeah, because they're able to get away with more than the Republicans, basically. And that's how they introduce more right-wing legislation and policy, by using the Democrats to do it under the cover of them being progressive. But yeah. Andrew says, please, Kshama, tell the worker strike back workings with the IWW. Okay, I will make sure she gets that message. Thank you very much. John McClure said, John McClure became a channel member. Thank you very much to John. All right. Justin B says, Kamala, the Green Party already exists. Why demand? I think you meant Kshama. The Green Party already exists. Why demand a new party? Starting from scratch will set us back and cost millions of ballot access fights. I say you just can't have enough. I don't think you can have enough parties, but I mean, that's what I got to say. You can't have enough.
I think it's a legitimate question. I would love to see more unity tickets. You know what I mean? I would love to see, like, I'm all down for people starting. I would love to start my own party. Like, I think I'm down for many parties, along with like some sort of a shared solidarity ticket. You know what I mean? But I do think this is a legitimate criticism and legitimate question. But I think in my response to this would be, I think there's nothing wrong with you building your own organization and then forming coalitions with other like-minded people. You know what I mean? But I do think this is a legitimate question. That's how I will respond to it, though. Go ahead, JB.
Yeah. So thank you very much to Edwin for the super sticker. Appreciate it very much. We also have John McClure. Thank you for the next super sticker. Appreciate it. CEB Applejack says, Nick, it is not anarchy to recognize electoral politics won't win until we take our country back.
Fair enough.
CEB Applejack says, it isn't just voting. It's not voting and activating the base to revolt against the economy. Thank you very much for that.
I think we should do all the above. But I seen your comments. I appreciate the dialogue, brother. I hear where you're coming from. I think we should be doing all the above. Go ahead, JB.
Yeah. Me too. A Mayor says anarchy is not lawlessness. It's simply rules we agreed on without rulers. Thank you very much for that. CEB Applejack says, I would never make a party within a system that will destroy it. I raise thousands for the community, but it is for not if we don't build a better system. Thank you very much. Let me see. Joseph says, great work. Can't wait to meet you all in February. That would be nice. That would be nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would love to be able to meet more comrades too. Justin B says, LOL, Kshama, not comma.
Oh, dude, I know this dude. I know this dude. That's my bro. Hey, John, what's popping, homie? What's popping? This is the dude I was organizing with in South Carolina. It's been a long time, homie. I was gonna give you a shout out and acknowledgement. I remember you, bro. Big shout out to John McClure, bro. Remember when I was in South Carolina, knocking on countless doors back in my brain days. I was hanging out with John McClure. He's an old school socialist, brother. I'm glad you discovered my new channel. Big shout out to you, bro. I remember you.
Yeah. So I have a couple of interesting chats that I wanted to go over. If you have to go, then feel free. But there was
I did 2.5 hour stream yesterday, and I got another stream tomorrow. So for a second, I'm saying I'm gonna dip out. So thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for Jaybe and his commentary. I'll be back tomorrow. There's so much foreign policy stuff. Zoya but laughing because I said I was gonna take a break, but I'm killing myself because there's so much stuff going on right now. So, and I'm gonna cover Trump transition, Trump potential Ukraine plan. There's all these even if Mike Pompeo is not picked, like everyone that has been floated thus far has been horrible. So these are kind of stuff I'm gonna be covering tomorrow. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Been a long week, man. See you guys tomorrow.
All right. Good night, Nick. So one of the things I wanted to do is just go over a couple of regular chats because I know some people have been speaking and I want to make sure that they also get a word in too. Paul says, we love you, Jill. Thank you. Thank you very much. Katie Lewis, who's part of the RBN Orlando chapter, says, not just Bernie, but his stupid media arm is pretending they're the ones that are enlightening their audience about how anti-working class the Democratic Party is. Cenk, for one, has been hilarious. Thank you very much. Shout out to Jesse Jett, part of the Indie News Network, is in the chat. Good to see you, Jesse Jett. Always nice to have a revolutionary artist in the chat. Zoya says the establishment's mission is to fracture the proletariat so they don't organize against their exploitation. They weaponize and co-opt legitimate movements like anti-war, climate, Me Too, BLM, LGBTQ, etc. Absolutely. I actually have just a quick thing to talk to my people about in a second. Zoya also says libs are calling ICE on Trump's voter families. The state produces a surveillance, punitive, infantile mindset that turns the more privileged into voluntary extensions of fascism in their communities. Yes, and this shows that liberals can also be racist. All right. Rider in Black says, wanted to hear Dr. Joe Stein play some guitar. Found an old video of young Jill playing. Yep, I would love to see that. She can play some Johnny Be Good. That'd be nice. Island Vibe says, Jill, we have seen you assaulted by cops, arrested, falsely imprisoned, lawfare. We know you are for us. We appreciate you. So thank you very much for that. And I wanted to, I'll ask Kshama about that conference on the back end. I'm assuming Seattle, which would be great because I've never been to Seattle and I would love to go to Washington State. But yeah, so yeah, I would love to go. So I hope I can go. You know, it's on a Saturday. So if I can fly out there and then fly back Sunday, that would be great. I would be elated to do that. Island Vibe says, I bet Jaybe gives the best hugs. You bet your ass. I do. And guess what? Not just one of those little itty bitty, like 2-second hugs. No. I'm holding you for 20 seconds firmly because that's just the kind of guy I am. Ask Jill. I gave her a hug before once. All right, everybody. So, just one more thing I wanted to share with you guys before we head on out because I know we have ran on long, but there was something that I wanted to share for everybody really quick. So this puts things into perspective. Let me share my screen really quick. So I want us to take a listen to this. But
the worst for who? The worst for who?
So somebody commented said today might end up being the worst day in American history after Donald Trump's win. Let's continue.
The worst for who? All of the stuff that y'all are scared of with Trump's presidency is still shit that was happening to every other demographic that was not white people. Under every other presidency, we watched Joe Biden whip people at the border on horseback. Right? He had the border patrol whipping people on horseback at the border. That happened a year into his presidency. And y'all went mass deportation, Trump is evil, as if we have not been putting children in cages this entire fucking time. Same with a lot of gay people and trans people's safety. All the queer POC I know were already in danger in certain states and couldn't be safe in certain states that did not have major metropolitan areas. A lot of rural states were already inherently fucking dangerous. So, other than Jim Crow that technically affects white people, what is worse? Because the status quo that y'all have been defending and clamoring for is already racist and homophobic and transphobic and xenophobic. It can just affect white people now. Democrats' refusal to reconcile with that they're not much better than their parents is why y'all lost a lot of votes. It's still fuck Trump, though. The worst.
So with that being said, let's continue to do the organizing work on the ground. Like I said, a vote for anybody, third party especially, is a side quest. That's the side quest. The main quest is actually doing organizing work on the ground, building dual power, and doing mutual aid, which we intend on doing heavily in 2025. So let's continue. Let's get it on. Let's do it. So with that being said, I want to share that I will be on Shane Graham's show this Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's going to be a post-election discussion that we're going to be having. And then I'm taking a week off. I don't care what none of y'all say. I'm taking a week off. It's been a long behind week. So y'all ain't going to see no Jaybe show on Sunday. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You know, I'm tired. Plus, I've been working with the campaign. Love Jill. Love everybody at the campaign. And they have been very wonderful to work with. But at the same time, that's a lot of work, y'all. I'm dead. All right. So with that being said, I got to get going because Sabby's about to come on. And I don't want to overlap with Sabby. Okay, so shout out to all the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, we would not be able to do this work. You guys make this absolutely possible. And we just love that you guys are doing the most for us so that we can continue to do this work. So that's what we have to do. So I just appreciate you guys all talking about revolution, having revolutionary optimism, and doing the damn thing and helping us to be able to help other people on the ground. So thank you very much to everybody for your contributions. Also, just to let you guys know, we will be back. Me and Sabby will be back next Thursday for the Sabby and Jaybe show. So do not miss that. And yeah, so thank you so much to Margaret Kimberley, Dr. Jill Stein, Kshama Sawant for joining us on this post-election panel. And this has been a really banger of a show. Like Nick always says, banger after banger. Deuces, Bruces. Oh, water your plants, water yourself, leave the world better you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. You got to do all the things necessary because joy is revolutionary. Watch something funny, all right? Mwah, forehead kisses. I'll see you later.